Chapter 605. Have you heard? The kids from Tonghui Lane have all gone to White Deer College. This sentence had almost become something that the people of Chang and would hear or discuss every day when they met. At that moment, in front of the East Market Treasury in Chang and City, a line was waiting for the porridge. Everyone squatted on the roadside and smelled the fragrance of the bone-strengthening powder and the cooked chicken and duck meat in the air. Each and every one of them swallowed their saliva. Even those who had money and leftover rice at home ran over. It would be worth it even if you bought a bowl of porridge for 1 copper coin. Why? Because the porridge was not only made with the bone-strengthening powder, which they could not afford to eat normally, but also with the fragrant big white chicken and big white duck. How could the porridge made with such ingredients not be good? That was why the citizens of Chang and City could not sit still. Even if they had to line up before dawn, they had to wait for a bowl of porridge. At that moment, the bored crowd looked at the rising smoke and began to discuss again. Your news is outdated. Have you heard of Hengtong Pawn Shop? A short and stout middle-aged man in the crowd wiped the sweat on his face with a brocade handkerchief and asked loudly. Sure enough, the crowd could not help but look over when they heard that. It didn't matter when they looked at it, but when they looked again, a hint of disdain flashed in their eyes. I was wondering who it was. Isn't that the accountant of Zhouji grain store? Why? Did you sell out all your grain? Why are you begging here? The fat man glared at the person who spoke. Get lost. Lao Tzu is craving for the bone-strengthening powder. Otherwise, Lao Tzu would not be squatting here with you. More importantly, I'm sick and I want to eat this. The crowd could not help but purse their lips when they heard that. Although they did not believe it, the powder was indeed delicious. More importantly, the bone-strengthening powder could make an old woman run fast even if she only had to carry a handful of water after eating it for 3 days. What did that mean? That was good stuff. The crowd suddenly remembered what the fat man had said earlier. They asked, You mentioned Hengtong Pawn Shop. What's wrong? Is it yellow? Yellow chicken, let me tell you. Last night, I was drinking with the bookkeeper of Hengtong Pawn Shop and learned of a big matter. Do you know Qian Tong? Does he have money? The richest shop in Chang and City is the pawn shop. You can imagine how much money Qian Tong has made over the past few decades. His son, Qian Wanli, actually gave up the opportunity to go to the Imperial College that Qian Tong paid a high price for. Instead, he went to the newly built White Deer College in Mtishao. Buzz. Hearing this, everyone felt like their heads were about to explode. What was going on? What was the Imperial College? That represented the royal family's highest educational institution. You're not even going? What was Qian Tong thinking? Was White Deer College really that good? Everyone thought about it and hurriedly urged him again, Accountant Mao, please continue. What else? Qian Tong is a well-known figure in Chang and City. How could he let his only son go to White Deer College? That's crazy. What kind of things are taught in that place? Anyone who learns from a teacher for a year or so will be able to wield a knife and go to war. Where can he go to learn? And learn for 3 years? Even if he's qualified to work in the Ministry of Works, the chances of getting a position are very slim. Which commoner can be so lucky in the imperial examinations now? The fat man surnamed Mao looked at the crowd with a smug face and slowly said, I don't know what Qian Tong is doing, but I know that you know Lord Go, the imperial astronomer, right? You know Lord Zhao, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, right? Last night, I heard that both of them took action. Even if their son leaves the family, he still wants to go to White Deer College in Mtishao. When everyone heard this, they couldn't sit still anymore. Although everyone was interested in White Deer College, it was just interest. It was enough as long as they could fill their bellies. Basically, other than Hui Tong Fong, not many people in Chang and City dared to send their sons there. Why? Because they were afraid. They were waiting to see who would take the lead. But now? Lord Go of the Imperial Astronomer, the son of a 4th-rank official, could go. Although they didn't know how Lord Go was executed, this skinny camel was fatter than them. Even he could go. Moreover, Zhao Yuxing was a fifth-rank official. His son would rather leave the family and go to White Deer College in Mdshao. What did this mean? Didn't they have any connections? No. Which one of them didn't have connections in the imperial court? But even so, they still wanted to go. Then, there was more to say. Even the son of a noble could go, but commoners like them couldn't. What was this? Motherf *Ker, could it be that they were more precious than those famous clans and families? Everyone couldn't help but feel flustered and embarrassed. They started to wonder if they should go to their residences and see if they could find someone to ask if it was true. And at this moment, not far from the treasury, countless people carrying ragged cloth bags suddenly swarmed over. People who were wrapped in large bedrolls or sheepskin scrolls swarmed over as if they were fleeing from a disaster. Among the people leading the group, there were 4 young men who were anxiously asking about something as they walked. May I trouble you to ask, how do I get to White Deer College? Sir, may I ask, how do I get to White Deer College in Mdshao? Everyone was dumbfounded. They asked cautiously, judging from your accent, you must be from Luozhou? Hao Chujun, who was neatly dressed, walked in front of the crowd. He cupped his hands and said, I'm Hao Chujun from Luozhou. I'm here to study at White Deer College in Chang'an City. May I ask, sir, how do I get to White Deer College? Everyone was dumbfounded. They couldn't help but panic. Motherf *Ker, people from Luozhou are here. Motherf *Ker, don't they want to be in a favorable position? Chapter 606. Everyone could not sit still. Someone pointed to the outside of the city. But the next moment, the people behind him ran away with their bowls when they were about to start eating. The person who pointed to the outside of the city hurriedly ran back with his bowl and said, Get out of the city. Turn east, turn right, and go straight. He was nowhere to be seen. There was nothing they could do. He had been waiting because he wanted to see who would take the lead in Chang'an. Now that the young masters of the Qian, Zhao, and Go families had gone there, they were tempted. But now? The people from Luozhou were here. What the hell were they waiting for? Were they waiting for White Deer College to put up a sign saying that they had enough people and were not recruiting? Were they going to ask for help? F***ck. Everyone wished they could give themselves a few tight slaps right now. Damn it, they had been flying eagles all day long. Today, they had been pecked blind by the eagles. Hao Chujun and the others were dumbfounded. He grabbed the slow old man and asked, Sir, what's the meaning of this? Why did they run away? Oh. Them. They were full and saw that you were hungry, so they made room for you. They were full? Wasn't the vault not open to give out porridge? How could they be full? Hao Chujun, Lai Ji, and the others looked at each other suspiciously. Then, they put down their bags and squatted by the roadside to give out porridge. It was not that they could not afford it. It was that where could they buy it along the way? Now, they could not even buy a bite of food with money. They had not touched their travel expenses along the way. They were so hungry that they felt dizzy. When they arrived in Chang'an City, they heard that the porridge in the vault not only contained bone-strengthening powder, but also chicken and duck. 1 bowl of porridge could last them 3 days. That was why they hurried over. They wanted to buy a bowl of rice. They had eaten bark and grass along the way. Their mouths were full of the smell of bark. If they went up the mountain like this, how could they have the face to read the sage books when they met their teacher? Open the porridge. At this moment, a sound rang out as the door of the treasury slowly opened. Waves of enticing fragrance made the several hundred students from Luozhou temporarily forget about the sage books that they were craving for. They took the bowls and rushed to the treasury. At this moment, Li Fu hurriedly shouted from behind the crowd, Hao Chujun. Lai Ji, something happened. Hao Chujun, Lai Ji, come out quickly. Stop eating porridge, something big has happened. But there were too many people, and everyone was so hungry that no one cared about Li Yifu's shouts. Li Yifu didn't care anymore. She tossed the bowl in her hand to Gao Zhizhou and managed to get a bowl of porridge from the crowd. After everyone was full, Hao Chujun smacked his lips and said, "This legendary bone-strengthening powder really has a different taste." "Oh right, Mansion. Why did you call for me just now?" Li Yifu ate the last drop of porridge in the bowl with a spoon, then rubbed his belly and said, "Those bastards, do you really think they're giving us space?" They went back and dragged their families to Shao Mountain. Hearing this, in an instant, the several hundred youths who were still commenting on this bowl of porridge abruptly stopped talking. Everyone was stunned. The next moment, someone in the crowd shouted angrily and smashed the bowl in his hand. He shouted angrily, "Bastards! He's really king bastard. Let's go, damn it, we can't fall behind when we go to Shao Mountain. Damn it, let's go." The next moment, under the astonished gaze of Zhongguan, who was distributing porridge in the treasury, the several youths who looked like refugees all smashed the bowls in their hands and scampered away. Only the remains of the bowls were left on the ground. What's going on? The few workers in charge of distributing porridge were stupefied. I heard that they were going to Shao Mountain. They looked at each other. The next moment, everyone was shocked. White Deer College. They were going to White Deer College? Hundreds of people from Luozhou were going to White Deer College. Not good. Boss, I'll take a leave of absence and bring my son to White Deer College. I'll take a leave of absence too. Me too. An official was holding a pen in his hand and was recording the distribution of porridge and the sales of porridge today. He didn't even notice that the ink on the tip of the pen had dripped onto the paper, creating a large blooming ink flower. He was staring blankly at the people who left in a hurry. What was wrong with these people? Shao Mountain. White Deer College. What were these people? Were these people crazy? However, the next moment, he couldn't help but think of something that he had forgotten. It was an imperial edict before the famine started. It seemed like the White Deer Academy was written on the imperial edict. It seemed that these people were talking about White Deer College the most recently. Wasn't no one going? What was going on? Were they having a stroke? Why were so many people going? When he thought of this, he suddenly had a bad premonition. He slapped his thigh and shouted, "Not good. Someone, quickly report this to Elder Fong." However, other than the crows of the roosters and the high-pitched cries of the ducks, his voice could only be heard in this empty treasury. There were only the sounds of bubbles boiling in the pot and popping in the congee. He was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. There wasn't a single person around him. He was so angry that he threw away the pen in his hand and said fiercely, "People. Are they all dead? No one is going. Lao Tzu is going himself." Chapter 607. Zhang Feng didn't know what happened in Chang'an City. In 3 days, Ma Zhou's house was finally built under Zhang Feng's deliberate arrangement. It was a 2-story little red house. At the bottom of the house, there was something that looked like a lattice. The lattice was not big, only about 10 square feet. The fences of each lattice only reached the height of a person's chest. Inside, there was a water trough, a food trough, and a door. However, there were dozens of such things. It could be seen how big Ma Zhou's house was under Zhang Feng's deliberate arrangement. The second floor was for living. Ma Zhou knew that one was for sleeping. After all, there was a bamboo straw bed in it. The other room was similar to a study, but there was nothing in it except a table and stool made of bamboo and a bookshelf. Oh, there was also an oil lamp. However, there were only 2 rooms with a study. The other 9 rooms only had 1 bed. That was all. Zheng Tufu and his son and daughter-in-law happily became his neighbors. In the other room lived a man who made Ma Zhou's hair stand on end. It was said that he was an old eunuch from the palace. When he was in the palace, he was a big shot. His main job was to clean people's bodies. Ma Zhou always felt a little creepy when such a man lived next door. Of course, the house that the eunuch lived in was much better than Ma Zhou's. After all, his house was the largest and best house except for Jingtufu's house. Behind the house, one could see a waterfall in the depths of the Shao Mountain. It was enough to prove that this man's importance was incomparable to Ma Zhou and Jingtufu. Ma Zhou didn't understand this arrangement. But it was a great honor to have a house here. After all, except for the teacher Zhang Feng and the others, everyone here was still living in shacks made of twigs and sheepskin. Every time someone passed by, they would comment on this house and show envious eyes. However, Ma Zhou always felt that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he didn't know for the time being, but he always felt that something was wrong. At this moment, just as Ma Zhou placed his few books on the bookshelf and covered his bed with a layer of dried straw, Zhang Feng walked into Ma Zhou's room with a blanket in his arms under the envious gazes of Jingtufu and his family. Seeing this, Ma Zhou hurriedly stood up and bowed. Student Ma Zhou pays respect to teacher. Ma Zhou, are you satisfied with this house? Time was tight, so I didn't have time to paint it. Once Li Gan is done with his work, I'll personally ask him to bring someone to paint it for you. Then, I'll add some furniture for you. That's how a house should look like. But now the conditions on the mountain are limited, so you have to bear with it for a while. When Ma Zhou heard this, he instantly teared up. Thank you, teacher, for your kindness. What virtue and ability does Ma Zhou have to deserve such kindness from teacher? Ma Zhou is really terrified. Ha ha ha, it's fine, it's fine. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands. Since you're free, I have something to tell you. Zhang Feng pointed to the floor and said, do you know what's under here? Ma Zhou shook his head in puzzlement. The architecture here was simply inconceivable. How would he know what those circles below were? Although he had a rough idea that this was not a place for humans to live in, he had no idea what it was used for. He hurriedly bowed and said, I'm willing to listen to teacher's teachings. Zhang Feng was speechless. But what he liked about Ma Zhou was his vigor. It was more convenient to use him like this. When they arrived at Shao Mountain, Zhang Feng had basically prepared everything that he could think of for Ma Zhou. This made Li Qingxian and the others jealous. But Zhang Feng only said one sentence. They could either have the house as a gift, but there was a condition, and that was that they had to rear pigs. When they heard this, each of them ran away faster than the other. They did not even dare to look at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng gathered his thoughts and looked at Ma Zhou up and down. Then, he said, I heard that you've been in Chang'an for 5 years? Why didn't you participate in the last imperial examination? Ma Zhou's eyes darkened when he heard this, but he did not dare to not answer. He said, Teacher, you need to send your name to the imperial examination. Before I met teacher, I sent my name to all the places in Chang'an that I could send my name to, but I heard that you raised horses? Zhang Feng did not want to listen to his long-winded words and asked directly. Zhang Feng already knew about this. Ma Zhou's face turned pale when he heard this. He said helplessly, Yes, I did. It was all for my livelihood and to buy a book. I had no choice but to do this. Good, very good. Raising horses is good. Ma Zhou's expression froze. Raising horses is good? How is it good? If it was not for the handwritten authentic work of the former great scholar Chen, would he lower himself to feed horses? This was a humiliation to the literati. He did not understand what Zhang Feng wanted to say. What was the connection between this and the small enclosure below? He could only bow and wait quietly. When Zhang Feng saw this, he patted Ma Zhou's shoulder and said, When I saw you for the first time, I knew that you and I were fated to meet. So now, I have an important matter that I want to entrust to you. Are you willing to do it? Chapter 608. Ma Zhou's heart tightened. His eyes reddened involuntarily. Who was he? To put it bluntly, he was just a down-and-out scholar. If he hadn't met Zhang Feng, he might have starved to death in this famine. What did he do to deserve Zhang Feng's favor? Was this the blessing of the ancestors? It must be. Ma Zhou hurriedly wanted to kneel, but Zhang Feng's cough woke him up. He didn't know whether to kneel or not. He was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. Seeing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but smile. You don't have to do this. Although we are now teacher and student, if you don't want to, I won't force you, teacher, please rest assured. No matter what, I'm indebted to you for accepting me as your disciple. I will go through fire and water to repay you. Good, good, good. I'm relieved to hear your words. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands and narrowed his eyes into slits. He pulled Ma Zhou to sit on the bed beside him and said, "Let me tell you something first. What does the Tang dynasty need the most now? Food." Ma Zhou didn't even think about it. Zhang Feng asked again. Then why do we study? Why? Ma Zhou couldn't help but be silent for a moment before he said, if it were before, it would be to pass the imperial examinations and enter the official career to serve the Tang dynasty. What about now? Zhang Feng asked again. Ma Zhou was silent for a while before he said, to save the people from water and fire. Now the Tang dynasty has experienced countless disasters since the founding of the country. Now we are facing drought, locusts, and famine again. Although the wise emperor of the Tang dynasty has set up the cooperative that is beneficial to the people, and you have also made beer. You took the wheat that sprouted from the poor people. In the eyes of others, you may be the kind of bodhisattva who saves people from suffering, but more people say you are a prodigal. But I think if everyone in the world could be like you, there wouldn't be disasters in the world. Zhang Feng was delighted to hear that. Although he really didn't want to listen to flattery. However, he still felt extremely comfortable when Ma Zhou flattered him. Zhang Feng signaled Ma Zhou to continue. Ma Zhou then said, actually, all of this was foreseeable. While everyone was working behind closed doors, the teacher put in 20,000 dawn of grain to suppress the price of grain. This forced the imperial court to lower the price of grain. What is this? This is carelessness. This is also what we need. But in the Tang dynasty, basically, out of 10 people, 10 of them are rough men who can't read big words. What's this? This was a crisis. If a country can't even popularize the most basic things, it's extremely dangerous. This is also why I thought about it for 3 days after I saw the imperial edict. Why did the teacher do such an unprecedented thing? Free. Confucius once said in his book that one should not receive a reward for nothing, let alone knowledge. This is what I've been most confused about recently. Although I have a general idea after reading the contents of the imperial edict and seeing what happened on the mountain in the past few days, Zhang Feng interrupted Ma Zhou and asked, you are right. Although my academy doesn't charge money, it is a little. However, I have a condition. Do you understand now? Ma Zhou nodded. This is also why I admire you the most. You use labor to replace labor. Although we don't charge money, we use another method to make up for it. However, this is only useful in the beginning. If we wait until Mount E is built, then this method will be. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said with a smile, you are very good. There are not many people who can think of this now. Even Shintinu and the others pestered me for several days because of this. I didn't expect you to be enlightened. In fact, this is also our task. You're right. How can we free these poor commoners from their poverty? On one hand, we need the government to be benevolent. On the other hand, we need people like us to perfect it and then give it back to the commoners. This is also what Confucius taught us. I once saw a sentence in an ancient book. It is better to teach people to fish than to give them fish. This is my original intention of establishing this academy. Do you understand now? Ma Zhou could not help but be shocked. Although he couldn't figure out where this sentence came from no matter how hard he racked his brain, the impact this sentence had on him, and what Zhang Feng was doing now really opened a door to him that he had never touched before. Ma Zhou could not help but tidy up his clothes and bow respectfully. I understand. Zhang Feng saw that the time was ripe and said, so, I will tell you one more thing. Teacher, please speak. I intend to hand over the matter of rearing pigs to you. They are the economic pillar of White Deer College. Are you willing to take over this heavy responsibility? Ma Zhou was dumbfounded. After talking so much, all she wanted was for him to raise pigs. At this moment, Zhang Feng added, "Don't worry. Every one of them who wants to study here will have a different task. This task will ultimately affect your academic credits. However, I can guarantee that after 3 years, no matter what, I will recommend you to the Ministry of Administration. Are you willing?" What could Ma Zhou say? He could only bow hurriedly. "I will listen to teacher's instructions." Chapter 609. Zhang Feng was in a good mood when he saw that the matter was settled. He patted the disappointed Ma Zhou and said, "Ma Zhou, do a good job. I can guarantee that if I, Zhang Feng, can't teach you to become a Jinsher in the imperial examination 3 years later, Zhang Feng will present my head to you." Ma Zhou was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly said, "As a teacher, you can't do this. It's already a great honor to be able to study in the academy. As a teacher, please don't do this. Otherwise, Ma Zhou will only feel ashamed to face you." Zhang Feng knew that Ma Zhou would feel aggrieved in his heart. This would directly affect the growth of these pigs. He then said carefully, "I know that you must think that raising pigs is such a lowly and shameful thing. How can a Confucian student be entrusted with such a lowly and shameful thing? You're wrong. If it's an ordinary pig, I naturally won't let any of you touch it. Even if you want to raise it, I will drive you out. But this is different. The porridge that you eat every day has this pork in it. Let me ask you, how many people can afford to eat mutton now? This pork is basically the main source of income for the people. However, this ordinary pig can only reach a weight of about 50 kilograms after a year. Moreover, it is extremely thin. However, I have found a way to make this pig grow to 200 kilograms within 3 months. Moreover, it doesn't have a foul or fishy smell. Not only that, I also want to use this pork to replace the realgar powder in the porridge. When the time comes, it will be able to enter the elegant hall and become the emperor's breakfast. The reason why I didn't ask others is that I'm worried. You're very careful. You are meticulous, and you are a scholar. You know what these animals need to eat, and so on. These are all knowledge. If there is a little problem with one of them, it will affect the taste of the pork. That is why I asked you to come. Do you understand my difficulties? I'm doing this for the welfare of the people in the world. I'm making an excellent breakfast for the emperor." Finally, Ma Zhou was shocked by Zhang Feng's persuasion. He couldn't help but ask in a trembling voice, 3 months? 200 caddies? And it doesn't have a foul or fishy smell? This is something prepared for the emperor? For the welfare of the people in the world. Yes. Zhang Feng continued to tempt him, "Think about it. Isn't this what the sages said, bow your head and be willing to be an ox, frown and be pointed at by thousands of people?" Zhang Feng's famous sentence erupted once again. He didn't care if Ma Zhou could understand him or not. In any case, he just said whatever he wanted to say. The flesh on Ma Zhou's face trembled as he spoke. He was abnormally excited. What is this? This was a teacher imparting moral principles. This was something that could never be learned from books, poems, etiquette, or the book of songs. But now, Zhang Feng was also pretending to be impressive. As for the purpose, let's not talk about it then. It was all to trick Ma Zhou and let him raise pigs for him with peace of mind. After all, he had been craving this thing for more than a day or 2. After that, Zhang Feng took Ma Zhou and the old Xiaotsai and knocked on the old eunuch's door. The old eunuch was from the palace and was called Eunuch Gao. However, her common name surprised Zhang Feng. His name was Gao Jingyi. Eunuch Gao. Gao Jingyi opened the door and was somewhat displeased. "Old man. Old man already said that you can call me Old Gao or Old Gao. You brat, what are you trying to do?" Eunuchs who left the palace were generally not allowed to use the name of the palace, nor could they use the word eunuch. After all, it was a disgrace to the royal family. Moreover, Gao Jingyi was also flustered. He was originally cleaning people in the palace, but after he left the palace, he became involved in the business of raising pigs. Although they were all Daoists, it was still somewhat embarrassing. At this moment, Zhang Feng scratched his head embarrassedly. He didn't mind at all. His skin was as thick as the city wall. Well, I found a few helpers for you today. This is Ma Zhou, my brother. He has experience in raising. Well, this is Jing Tufu, and his son Jing. Ahem, I'm Jing Fengxian. Jing Tufu's son knew how powerful this master was. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't know his name, he hurriedly added. Today, I was thinking that since you all live in the same building, you should basically take care of each other in these matters in the future. Old Gao, I'll leave this matter to you. As for what you want, you just need to tell Ma Zhou. Old Gao pursed his lips. He glanced at Ma Zhou, who was as thin as a monkey, and then at Jing Tufu and Jing Tufu, who were as strong as iron towers. His gaze involuntarily fell on the three's crotch, and the three couldn't help but turn pale. Old Gao pursed his lips. I'm used to it. Well, since we're all working for Prince Zhang, let's start the knife test today. When Zhang Feng heard that, he hurriedly winked at Jing Tufu. Old Jing, what are you waiting for? Old Gao is going to accept disciples. What are you waiting for? Jing Tufu was stunned for a while, then he hurriedly slapped the back of Jing Fengxian's head and roared, Brat, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Jing Fengxian was a little dumbfounded. What was there to learn about blacksmithing? It was not as satisfying as a butcher's knife. Chapter 610. After solving the problem of the pig, Zhang Feng encountered another big problem. At present, the situation on the mountain was basically stable. As for the teaching building, Zhang Feng had basically confirmed that it was a 3-story building. There was no other way. This grandson was too sneaky. Now, he even had an old eunuch from the palace who specialized in cleaning people on the mountain. Who could resist him? If this grandson was forced into a corner, he would stab you when you fell asleep. Haha. Therefore, under normal circumstances, when people saw Zhang Feng, they basically felt cold and insecure. There was no other way. Who knew if this grandson would do something bad to you? Although it was not very likely, they did not dare to make any guarantees. At this moment, these guys were squatting on the high platform at the gate of the mountain, looking down the mountain in a daze. Zhang Feng happened to pass by at this moment. He was going to check on the situation of the food storage in the past few days and look for Sun Simiao to study a kind of hay. However, from afar, he saw these guys slacking off and couldn't help but be angry. He shouted a few times, but these guys didn't respond at all. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel puzzled. He climbed up the sentry post made of 3 intersecting logs. Even when he sat down, these guys didn't notice him. What are you looking at? Zhang Feng couldn't help but be very interested. Following their gazes, Zhang Feng couldn't see a single person at the foot of the mountain. He couldn't help but feel more confused. When Zhang Feng's voice rang out, it instantly gave everyone a fright. Qing Chimo, who was sitting on the edge, almost fell down. F***ck, Feng Zi, you mother f***ker, say something. You'll scare me to death, do you understand? Zhang Feng spread his hands speechlessly. I've already shouted until my voice is hoarse, but you didn't hear me. Who's to blame? But what are you doing? Wei Shuyu, Li Qingxian, Zhang Sun, Chong, and Qing Chimo couldn't help but sigh when they heard this. Sigh. You've been circling around that horse all day. Haven't you noticed that there are no more people going up the mountain today? Zhang Feng was stunned. Isn't it good that no one is around? This meant that the famine was under control. Wasn't that a good thing? I say, you guys are cheap. When there are more people, you complain. When there's no one left, you guys. No. What we mean is that there is no news at all. This imperial edict should have been known by all the people of the Tang dynasty. Logically speaking, at least a few people should have come. But how long has it been? It's already July and there's not a single person here. This isn't normal. The few of them spoke. Zhang Feng finally knew what these guys were worried about. He couldn't help but fall silent. Looking at the empty mountain path, he could not help but make up his mind. Isn't it just people? Including the few of you, there are already 60 people on this mountain. What are you afraid of? Let's not talk about 60 people. Even if there is only one person, I've said before that my academy will continue to set up this place. Zhang Feng also found it strange. The imperial edict had been issued for more than half a month, but there was not a single person. No. There was only Ma Zhou. This was not normal. Since Ma Zhou was here, it meant that the people of Chang and city knew about it. What about how Chu Jun and the others recorded in history? Where did they go? Moreover, not to mention Chang and city, it had been almost 20 days. Even if the person who delivered the imperial edict had crawled, he should have reached the place by now, right? Could it be that these people were all on the way? Zhang Feng shook his head. Who cares? If they're not here, then they're not here. Lao Tzu did not care. By the way, the situation on this mountain has basically stabilized. Li Gan, you have a lot of connections. Go to the city and find me dozens of top carpenters. I've already found carpenters. Look at these beams. These are all carpenters. I'm talking about carpenters who do delicate work. At the very least, carpenters who make carved fans and the like. Li Qingxian was stunned. He looked at Zhang Feng and asked, "What? You want to make fans? Get lost." Zhang Feng said angrily, "It seems that the academy will basically take shape in a month. Moreover, this person has nothing to do. There will always be problems. I'm thinking of ordering a batch of teaching aides. But I'm still worried about this person, so I want you to find a few people who know him well and bring him to the mountain. It's best if they can stay on the mountain." Li Qingxian and the other 3 people were a little confused. What kind of teaching aids do you need such a craftsman? Such craftsmen are rare in Chang and city. But there are some, but it's not easy to find them. But what exactly are you going to do? Zhang Feng was too lazy to explain. He showed them the triangular board, compass, and other figures on a drawing in his arms. The few of them stared at each other, unable to understand what was going on. In the end, Zhang Feng said lightly, "Didn't you think that mathematics is nothing? Didn't you show off that you've learned it? Then let me ask you, what is the length of 30, the width of 20, and the height of 10? This is all knowledge. This is all mathematics. How much do you think you've learned? Come, I'll give you 3 days to calculate this question. If you've calculated it correctly, you can do whatever you want until the academy opens. How about it?" Li Qingxian and Du Go looked at each other. Then Li Qingxian asked solemnly, "Feng, is this also mathematics?" "What else? This is real mathematics. Great knowledge." Li Qingxian took a deep breath. He solemnly folded the drawing and put it in his arms. "I'll go find a carpenter now." Chapter 611. The reason why Li Qingxian left in a hurry without asking any questions was because he suddenly realized that the teaching tools Zhang Feng was going to make this time were the real skills he wanted to impart to them. Even the multiplication table and division table that he had mentioned before, what were those? Li Qingxian's intuition told him that it was a calculation method about the area. However, he was speechless when he was asked such a simple question. What kind of calculation method was this? In the past, when they calculated this kind of thing, they basically used steps and prints. But now? Li Qingxian's intuition told him that this thing, which he had never seen before, was a good thing. Although he didn't know what Zhang Feng was going to do this time, he still had to prepare these things. After all, although there might not be anyone coming, what if someone came? As soon as he went down the mountain, Li Qingxian hurried to the Ministry of Works. The Ministry of Works was a place where all kinds of strange and obscene skills were gathered. Basically, everyone who could enter the Ministry of Works was the best in the Tang dynasty. The Ministry of Works was undoubtedly the place to find such skilled people. However, before Li Qingxian entered Chang'an city on a fast horse, he was suddenly shocked by what he saw in front of him. At the city gate, countless people were rushing out of the city. Those people looked as if something terrible had happened in the city and wanted to escape. Li Qingxian had never seen such a scene. Even when the Turks were about to enter the Wei River, the people of Chang'an city didn't look like this. What was going on? However, Li Qingxian made way for the public road. After careful observation, he found that these people had one thing in common: they were young. Most of them were young. Some of them were wearing shabby clothes, and some were wearing luxurious clothes. Li Qingxian even picked up a few stubborn people who used to wander around Chang'an city under the alias of Li Qingxian. Li Qingxian couldn't help but stop them and ask, "Where are you going?" Those stubborn people turned out to be Li Qingxian. They were a little surprised. "Brother Li, aren't you at Chang'an University? Why are you out of the city?" Li Qingxian couldn't be bothered to explain. He pointed at the crowd and asked, "What are these people going to do? What happened in Chang'an city? What happened?" They looked at each other and said in surprise, "You don't know about this?" Li Qingxian was also anxious. "What do I know? You really don't know?" They were even more surprised. Basically, everyone in Chang'an city who could understand human language knew about this matter. How could this guy not know about it? Were they still the former 4 great demon kings? Holy shit! What was going on? Strange expressions appeared on their faces. One of the youths came to Li Qingxian's side and whispered into his ear, "Are you sure you don't know?" Li Qingxian was also anxious. "If I knew, would I need to ask you?" Seeing this, they said, "Are you sure you don't know about White Deer College?" Wang. A buzzing sound rang out in Li Qingxian's mind. Could it be, are these people going to White Deer College? F***ck. Then, Li Qingxian could not help but be shocked. Looking at the thousands of people rushing out of the city with weapons in their hands, the hair on his body stood on end. "Oh no!" Li Qingxian screamed. He even forgot about the matter of going to Chang'an city. He got on his horse and rushed to Mount Han, leaving behind a few stubborn people who looked at each other. F***ck, what's wrong with young Master Li? Did he take the wrong medicine? No, I think he's going to Mount Shao. Look, he's just about to enter the city. Could it be? They could not help but look at each other again. At the same time, a sentence flashed in their minds. This guy had already gone to White Deer College. On the other side, Li Qingxian was shocked. He had always thought that Zhang Feng's college was too outrageous. He had read the sage's book, and it was very clear that one should not take a book for free. However, Zhang Feng did the opposite. Not only did he not want money, but he even wanted to arrange for him to enter an important department in the palace. Although Li Qingxian and the others thought that Zhang Feng's actions were outrageous, they could understand it. However, how could ordinary people accept it? But now? F***ck, it was not that they could not accept such a college, but they wanted to come together. Li Qingxian waved his whip as if his life depended on it. He hated the fact that the horse was too slow. If only it had a pair of wings. That way, he would be able to see Zhang Feng's shocked face earlier. Giddy up! Giddy up! Giddy up! Li Qingxian waved his whip and rushed to White Deer College. Along the way, Li Qingxian ignored all the greetings of the people who were transporting materials to and fro. The onlookers were baffled by this scene. Before reaching the gate, Li Qingxian saw Zhang Feng and the others standing on the sentry post. He waved his white robe and shouted, "Feng Zi, something happened. Something big happened in Chang'an." Chapter 612. Zhang Feng, who was arguing with Qing Chumo and the others about the importance of cement, wondered if he was playing the lute to a cow. And at this moment, Li Qingxian's voice at the foot of the mountain saved his life. How could you explain this to a few uncouth men and a monk? This was King Fatal. Li Qingxian was simply a great savior. Before Zhang Feng could thank Li Qingxian silently in his heart, his next sentence scared Zhang Feng so much that his legs went soft. The few of them were basically in the same situation. They anxiously leaned on the railing of the sentry post and looked at Li Qingxian at the foot of the mountain in the distance. They shouted, "What happened?" However, the distance was too far, and Zhang Feng's lung capacity was not enough. Once he shouted, he felt suffocated and dizzy. Zhang Feng hurriedly grabbed Qing Chumo. "Taimyo, shout. Ask what happened." What happened? Zhang Feng was not worried about anything else. He was only worried about his small pub and the brewery. Especially the basement that he dug. It was filled with money that he had saved up. There was also a book of 300 poems of the Tang dynasty that he had prepared to write to show off. If that place was destroyed by thieves, he would lose a lot of money. That was what he had prepared to present to the emperor when he entered the imperial court. He would use it to show off. The other one was the winery next to the tavern. Now that most of the workers in Tonghui Fang had left, the workers there had been replaced by old Li's men. Although the sprouted wheat stored in the winery had been dried and stored to be used for brewing wine, it was still edible at a time like this where diseases were everywhere. If someone who was starving went to get it for him, that was basically the same as cutting off his only source of income. Seeing Zhang Feng begging, Qing Chumo finally cleared his throat and shouted, "Young Master Li, Feng Zi asked you, what happened? Is there something wrong with the tavern?" This voice exploded like muffled thunder, instantly causing Li Qingxian's warhorse to tremble. Only then did Li Qingxian roar, "No, nothing happened to the tavern." Amidst the wind and the rustling of the tree trunks. That was all the crowd heard. "It's gone, the tavern is gone, something happened." When Zhang Feng heard this, he only felt his head sink and was about to fall head first. "It's over. Motherf *Ker, it's all over. I don't want to live anymore. It's Lao Tzu's money. Lao Tzu's poetry collection." Fortunately, Wei Shuyu and the others were skilled. Seeing that Zhang Feng was about to fall, they hurriedly pulled him back. At this time, everyone at the mountain gate also heard this sentence. Old He and the others could not help but explode. "What? Did you hear that, neighbors? Feng Zi's tavern is gone. Workers of Tonghui Lane, get your weapons and go down the mountain. Let's see who has the guts to touch Feng Zi's tavern. Go, go, go. Feng Zi, don't take it too hard. We'll avenge you right now. Go, 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 avenge Feng Zi. Feng Zi's tavern is in trouble." At this time, as this matter spread around the mountain gate, everyone was also talking about it. Unwittingly, as the rumor spread, the atmosphere changed. Feng Zi is in trouble. Feng Zi is gone. Feng Zi is in trouble. Quick, go to the mountain gate. Someone is fighting their way up the mountain. Feng Zi is in trouble. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. What happened to Feng Zi? However, in the next moment, the people who were working at the construction site were furious. If it were not for Zhang Feng, how would they be able to eat their fill? If it were not for Zhang Feng, they would have starved to death. If it were not for Zhang Feng, how would their son have the chance to enter the school? If it were not for Zhang Feng, how would they be able to find a way to survive in this year of disaster? But damn it, someone dared to cause trouble? Brothers, Feng Zi has given away his entire family fortune for us. Now, someone wants to kill Feng Zi. What is this? This is destroying our way of survival. I can't stand it. Let's go, kill him. No matter who it is, if he dares to touch Feng Zi, he will be my enemy for life. Let's go, let's beat him to death. At this moment, at the back of the mountain, which was the pig farm in the call of Shao Mountain, Jing Tufu and his son, as well as Ma Zhou, were squatting on the ground, watching the old eunuch Old Gao sharpen a strangely shaped knife while explaining the techniques of pig slaughtering. At this moment, the dogs suddenly rushed over. Oh no, something happened. Brother Feng Zi is in trouble. The few of them heard that. They were instantly shocked. What? What's going on? Dog, what happened to Feng Zi? The few of them hurriedly asked. Zheng Tufu picked up the butcher's knife and rushed to the dog. He shouted angrily, what happened to Feng Zi? Give me a clear explanation. The dog was also scared out of his wits. He hurriedly said in a trembling voice, I just heard at the construction site that something happened to Feng Zi at the entrance of the mountain. I heard that he was, what? Zheng Tufu was shocked when he heard that. Damn it, who dares to touch Feng Zi? Lao Tzu will not let him off. While shouting, Zheng Tufu hurriedly rushed out of the mountain gate with the butcher's knife. Old Gao, Ma Zhou, and Zheng Tufu's son looked at each other and hurriedly followed. Chapter 613. Mount Tai was not big. However, the news spread very quickly. As time passed, everyone knew one thing. Zhang Feng was killed. How could that be? Who the hell dared to cut off their livelihood? If it wasn't for Zhang Feng opening up the food supply, most of the people here would probably starve to death or become beggars by the city gate. However, since Zhang Feng suppressed the food price, not only could they fill their stomachs, but they also had meat to eat for every meal. They also had jobs. If they did well, they could even earn a little money. Although the money was not much, at least it could get them through this disaster year. However, who had the guts to touch Zhang Feng now? Therefore, regardless of whether it was a 65-year-old man or a 12-year-old child, the stones on the mountain were free anyway. They grabbed 2 smooth pebbles and rushed to the mountain gate angrily. Kill. Avenge Zhang Feng. Who dares to make trouble on the mountain? Kill him. Qing Chimo and the others who were at the mountain gate were dumbfounded when they heard that. He patted Zhang Feng, who was also dumbfounded, and said, Feng Zi, what's going on? Why are these people shouting to avenge you? Who knows? Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. Looking at the angry crowd running over, he had no choice but to stand on the big cart at the mountain gate and shout, what's going on? Don't you want to work? The one who rushed the fastest was Gan Ziyuan. However, he suddenly saw Zhang Feng climbing onto a big cart from afar. He could not help but slam on the brakes and spread his arms to stop the crowd. Only then did he stop 3 feet away from Zhang Feng and the others. At this moment, everyone saw Zhang Feng. They could not help but look at each other. What's going on? What's going on? Didn't Feng Zi say something happened? Could it be? Is it a ghost? Is Feng Zi really dead? Everyone was dumbfounded. When Zhang Feng heard this, he was in a bad mood. Who the hell said I'm dead? Who's the one with the rotten mouth who said I'm dead? Zhang Feng was trembling with anger. As more and more people rushed over, after seeing Zhang Feng's appearance, even the women and children directly knelt on the ground and wailed. Oh my God! What a good person! Which damned bastard came to harm him? My mother! Avenge Feng Zi! Look, Feng Zi was worried about the academy even when he died for us and for our children. Take revenge. I must take revenge. I want revenge. Seeing that everyone was crying and saying such things, how could Zhang Feng not know that there was a problem? However, he didn't know where the problem was for the time being. However, did this have anything to do with Li Gan's words? Holy shit. It was over. What the F***ck, stop. Don't cry. Shut the F***ck up, Lao Tzu. Qing Chimo couldn't sit still anymore. Even though his brain was a beat slower than others, he understood the cause and effect of the matter. He wanted to laugh. Wei Shuyu, Zhang Sun, and the other 3 wanted to laugh as well. However, this was not the time to laugh. Under the instigation of several people, Qing Chimo brought out his domineering aura of a stubborn demon king. Needless to say, this roar was really effective. The wailing stopped. Those who wanted to avenge Zhang Feng shrank into the crowd and didn't dare to make a sound. Zhang Feng pulled at his hair. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly. Go back, I'm fine. Don't believe the rumors. At this moment, Zheng Tufu and the others squeezed through the crowd. When everyone saw this, their eyes couldn't help but light up. Zheng Tufu's murderous aura was the bane of spirits. He urged him, Zheng Tufu, go take a look at Feng Zi. Are you sure he's alright? Yes, Zheng Tufu, your murderous aura is heavy. Go take a look. Zhang Feng had no choice but to let Zheng Tufu massage him. Zheng Tufu's face was about to explode. Wasn't Feng Zi fine? At this moment, everyone couldn't help but hold their breaths. Zheng Tufu silently tidied up Zhang Feng's messy hair. Then, he waved his butcher's knife and roared, Motherf asterisk Ker, go Zi, you piece of trash, come out from Lao Tzu. You Motherf asterisk Ker dare to say that Feng Zi is dead. Do you believe that Lao Tzu will kill you first? Go Zi, who was squeezed in the crowd, shuddered. He quickly shrank his body and crawled out of the crowd. At this moment, under Zheng Tufu's confirmation, everyone finally knew that Zhang Feng was fine. Only then did they leave embarrassedly. It's good that he's fine. Ha ha ha, he's fine. Go and do your work. Are you slacking off here? Let's go, let's go. Feng Zi is fine. Zhang Feng was speechless. He wished he could find someone to beat up. However, after looking around, Chen Tiniu couldn't beat him. Idiot Wei and Bug were even worse. There was only one soft and Du Dabing. But he was afraid. A beating was a beating. This grandson would surround you and recite scriptures for a few days. Who could stand that? In the end, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. He looked at Li Qingxian, who was rushing down the mountain, and shouted angrily, Li Qingxian, you bastard, die. Chapter 6:14. Li Qingxian was very anxious. A large number of students were running up the mountain. He had just seen Zhang Feng and even saw a large number of people gathered at the mountain gate. But why was there no one now? But this was not important. What was important was he had to let Feng Zi know the good news. The path up the mountain was not straight. It was a winding road built with the mountain. At this time, he could not see anyone on the road. It was as if everyone had gone up the mountain in an instant. He even saw some people cooking in the huts where the fire was lit. At this time, he suddenly heard Zhang Feng's roar. Although he could not hear it clearly, he could faintly feel that Zhang Feng and the others were running down the mountain. Li Qingxian hurriedly waved his horsewhip and shouted, Feng Zi, don't come. Run back. Get ready, people are coming. There are so many of them. But in the forest, especially in the windy forest, the meaning of these words was different. The few people running down the mountain, as well as Gan Ziyuan and the others behind them, heard, Feng Zi, don't run back. There are so many people coming. As soon as he heard this sentence, Zhang Feng didn't feel good at all. As for Gan Ziyuan, he staggered and fell into the mud. Damn it. This was the Crown Prince? What was the Crown Prince doing? He was going crazy. Zhang Feng also stopped running. He was so angry that he looked left and right. Feng Zi pulled a thin bamboo from the side of the road and held it in his hand. Instead, he listened to the sound of horse hooves and waited. Why should I run? This bastard will definitely come up. Although he did not know why he beat Li Qingxian, he had to vent his anger. And Qing Chimo and the others did not say anything. They pursed their lips. Anyone with eyes could see that the four of them were trying very hard to hold back their laughter. But Zhang Feng did not notice this. His attention was focused on the sound of horse hooves. Hearing the sound of horse hooves gradually approaching, the laughter in their eyes deepened. But the fear in Gan Ziyuan's eyes grew stronger and stronger. Damn it, it's over. What did the crown prince just say? If he hit him with the stick, it would be a big problem. What should I do? Help? Or not to help? Just as Gan Ziyuan was in a dilemma about whether to help or not, Li Qingxian's white horse finally came from afar. When Li Qingxian saw Zhang Feng and the others waiting here, he was puzzled for a moment. However, he didn't think too much about it and rushed towards Zhang Feng. Before he could dismount, Zhang Feng picked up the bamboo stick and threw it at his head and face. "Awoo, awoo, awoo. Don't hit me. Feng Zi, are you crazy? Why are you hitting me? F***ck, stop, stop. Holy shit." Li Qingxian was badly beaten. Most importantly, this thin bamboo stick only hurt when it hit someone, but it didn't leave any wounds. At this moment, Li Qingxian was grimacing in pain as he kept shouting. "Iron Bull, you mother****, are you still watching the show? Come and stop the fight. What is the meaning of this? F***ck. Awoo, stop hitting him, stop hitting him. If you keep hitting him, do you believe that Lao Tzu will get angry? Awoo." Before he could finish speaking, a high-pitched scream was heard. Li Qingxian had never been beaten in his life. This beating stupefied Li Qingxian's entire person. Finally, Qing Chimo and the others couldn't stand it anymore. Qing Chimo lifted Zhang Feng up as if he was carrying a chick. "Feng Zi, calm down, calm down. Put me down. Pick me up." Who was the one being impulsive? Zhang Feng's anger had also subsided. However, he still felt uncomfortable when this matter was mentioned. "Feng Zi, calm down. Listen to what he said. Don't you know him? Even if you give him 10 guts, he won't dare to say anything bad about you, right?" Du Go also hurried forward to persuade him. Zhang Feng thought for a moment. He struggled out from under Qing Chimo's iron pincers and asked, "What did you shout at the foot of the mountain just now? Didn't I just shout that something happened and a lot of people came? What's the big deal? Did you beat me up because of this?" Zhang Feng was dumbfounded and slapped himself hard on the face. Qing Chimo and the others were also dumbfounded. Li Qingxian was even more dumbfounded. Did this guy do it because of this? Hit me? Zhang Feng finally remembered something at this time. When the sound was transmitted in the wind, there would be a deviation. Why didn't I think of it just now? However, he had already hit him. What could Zhang Feng say? He coughed and said, "Do you know why I hit you?" How would Li Qingxian know? He stared at Zhang Feng and clenched his fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't dare to say anything. He hurriedly calmed himself down and said, "I asked you to go down the mountain to do something, but you just went down the mountain and ran up. 3 points will be deducted from this semester's credits, but for your sake, this meal will make up for those 3 points, bang." Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Qingxian's fist landed on Zhang Feng's stomach. "What the F***ck, I thought you were doing it for something. You hit me for this? What the F***ck? Look at the foot of the mountain. What's at the foot of the mountain?" Li Qingxian was about to cry. Although he punched out, it just tickled Zhang Feng's stomach. It didn't hurt at all. He didn't dare to hit Zhang Feng. This was an unexpected disaster. This was simply an unexpected disaster. However, at this time, Zhang Feng and the others were also dumbfounded when they looked at the foot of the mountain. Zhang Feng patted Li Qingxian on the shoulder and asked blankly, "Li Qingxian, who are those people running wildly at the foot of the mountain?" Chapter 6:15. Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. At this moment, standing on the winding mountain path, they could already see the faint silhouettes of people at the foot of the mountain. There were a lot of people, but they looked slightly better than those who were fleeing. Among them, there was no lack of people wearing brightly colored clothes. That was what puzzled Zhang Feng. Li Qingxian didn't say anything. He rubbed a bloodstain on his arm and snorted. Then, he turned around and rode his horse up the mountain. When Zhang Feng saw Li Qingxian running away, he hurriedly followed him up the mountain. Gan Ziyuan, on the other hand, was stunned. He didn't care who was coming down the mountain. After all, this mountain was in high demand. There were many people who had come. But at this moment, the one who shocked him the most was the crown prince. He was beaten up and ran away without saying a word. Was that the crown prince? He felt that his worldview had been destroyed. The crown prince. He was a high and mighty person. How could it be like this? On the other side. At the foot of the mountain. Li Fu and the others looked at the rising smoke and the banging sounds of tents and trees. They couldn't help but feel excited. Brothers, we're here. Hao Chujun and the others looked at the mountain in front of them in surprise. Is this the White Deer College mentioned in the Imperial Edict? It doesn't look like it here. They looked at the place that looked like a construction site and couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Was this an academy? Wasn't this a construction site? Let's go. Didn't you see so many people running up the mountain? That means this place is right. Lai Ji wiped the sweat off his forehead and tightened the blanket on his back. Then, he hurriedly followed the footsteps of the people from Chang'an. It couldn't be helped. The people from Chang'an were very crafty. While they were eating, many people had disappeared in just a short while. When they came out of the city gates, they saw that there were more people outside the city than inside the city. How could this be? How the F***ck could this be? The people from Luo Zhou couldn't sit still. She scampered up the mountain after him. At this moment, just as they were about to cross the Wei River, they saw dozens of youths looking at the group in a daze. One by one, they were asking questions. Excuse me, where are you going? Brother, where are you going? Did something happen in Chang'an City? But no one cared about them. There was no other reason. Because in the eyes of the people in Chang'an, as long as you looked young, you would definitely go to White Deer College. How big was White Deer College? How many people could he take in? If all of them went up, wouldn't his chances be reduced? This is our Chang'an Academy. We can't let outsiders take advantage of it, can we? Therefore, as long as someone asked, the better ones would reply that they didn't know, and the worse ones wouldn't even look at them. It was as if he had met his mortal enemy. At this time, Hao Chujun and the others had just passed by these people and saw the honest Lai Ji being pulled by the arm. Brother, may I ask where you're heading to? I don't know, ask someone else. Without waiting for Lai Ji to speak, a fair and plump Chang'an youth who had just passed by said something in a low voice and then pulled Lai Ji forward. Kid, if you want to go to White Deer College, don't interrupt. If you dare to say anything, your chances of entering the school will be reduced. At that time, you can do as you see fit. Under the gaze of the youth, Lai Ji nodded. Oh, Lai Ji replied. He turned around and said, Brother, you're going to White Deer College too. Look, we're all going to White Deer College. Li Fu and the others were dumbfounded. The youth was dumbfounded. The youths who passed by Chang'an City were dumbfounded. Everyone looked at this dark and swarthy weirdo as if they were looking at an idiot. F***ck, you're a F***king idiot. Go go go, brothers, run faster. Hao Chujun and the others looked at Lai Ji speechlessly. Although they knew that Lai Ji was doing the right thing, if they were to fall out with these people and say something bad about them in front of the examiner, then, they could only pat Lai Ji's shoulder speechlessly. Let's go. The youth who had asked for directions thanked them profusely. He was inexplicably surprised and ran madly again, spreading the news along the way. They're going to White Deer College. Come back, don't go to Chang'an City. Here, these people are all going to White Deer College. Hearing that, the people who came from Chang and city and the children who were preparing to go to school ran even faster. Some of them even abandoned their luggage. They carried their dolls and ran up the mountain. They had no choice. There were so many people. If they went up, how many of them would stay? If they didn't give these foreigners a chance to speak, they would be fine as Chang and residents. However, it was different now. Everyone panicked. Charge. Who cares? Don't bother with your luggage. As long as you enter the college, Lao Tzu will sell his house to get your luggage. Go go go, go, go. Damn it, don't block the way. The vast and mighty group of people, like a swarm of migrating locusts, instantly swarmed like a tidal wave toward a small three-pack in the middle of the two mountains. Hao Chu-jun and the others' luggage had been squeezed to God knows where. At this moment, they could only follow the crowd up the mountain. One could imagine how dense the crowd was. Chapter 6:16. On the mountain. Li Qingxian was sitting in a carriage at the entrance of the mountain. A guard disguised as a servant was rubbing medicine all over his body. Li Qingxian was in so much pain that he was grimacing in pain. At this moment, Li Qingxian's guard at the foot of the mountain rushed up the mountain. Prince Zhang, bad news, bad news. Something has happened at the foot of the mountain. There are about 3,000 people at the foot of the mountain. Although most of them are in disguise, most of them are young people. It's suspected, what? Zhang Feng could not help but turn pale with fright when he heard this. At this moment, Li Qingxian glanced at Zhang Feng proudly. Now you know how to be anxious. Li Gan, Uncle Li, who are these people? Zhang Feng was anxious. Could it be that they had encountered bandits? At the thought of this, Zhang Feng could no longer remain calm. This was a possibility, a real possibility. The fact that there were 30,000 dan of grain on the mountain had long been an open secret. If they had encountered bandits, then it really made sense. Zhang Feng could not help but feel his hair stand on end. Idiot Wei, quickly get Li Gan's horse and take a shortcut down the mountain. Go get reinforcements and report to the authorities that bandits are here. Also, Tinu, do you have a handy weapon here? Quickly call someone to guard the gate. De Bing, quickly go up the mountain to find Dr. Sunday. Ask someone to hide the grain. Zhang Feng finally panicked. He finally knew why this guy was so anxious. Damn, so many people had come. Why did they not even let out a fart when they went up the mountain? Could it be that this guy had a card up his sleeve? Or, Zhang Feng could not help but feel relieved. Cheng Chimo and the others stood there motionless, allowing Zhang Feng to jump up and down like a monkey. It seemed that they had already thought of something. Looking around, Zhang Feng only saw the citizens of Tonghui Lane standing behind him with a common enemy, while Chen Tinyu and the rest looked left and right. No. This isn't right. Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something. If the bandits were here, Li Gan would be the most anxious one. He was the one who found the craftsmen and paid for the construction of the academy. If the bandits were here, he would be the most anxious one. But this guy was still so carefree. Something was wrong. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng's anxious heart calmed down for a moment. Li Gan? Brother Li, Uncle Li, tell me, who is the person down there? Uncle Li? F***CK. Lao Tzu won't wait if you don't say anything. Zhang Feng also lost his temper. You're not going to tell me? Did Lao Tzu not know how to wait? Zhang Feng couldn't help but sit down as well. Old He and the others looked at each other. At this time, if they could not see anything, then they would have lived in vain. They could not help but wave their hands. Let's go to work. Only then did they leave resentfully. However, these people looked at Li Gan with unfriendly eyes. Fine. You're awesome. You offended Feng Zi today. You'll have to eat, right? When the time comes, Lao Tzu will add some spice to your sauce. At this time, Qing Chimo and the others also gathered around Li Qingxian and sat on the bus openly. Wei Shuyu even brought a chair and sat at the mountain entrance. She even held a shoulder pole in her hand, looking ready to fight if there was any disagreement. They did not have to wait too long. After all, the time it took for Li Qingxian to go back and forth was enough for them to go up the mountain. The first batch of people went up the mountain. They stood impatiently at the mountain entrance. Those who knew Zhang Feng pointed at Zhang Feng and shouted in surprise, "Look! He's Zhang Feng! He's Zhang Feng! He's waiting for us! Hurry, 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 tidy up and greet the teacher!" Clang! Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Qing Chimo and the others were also dumbfounded. Even the shoulder pole in Wei Shuyu's hand fell to the ground. "Feng Zi, I say. What's going on?" Zhang Feng did not know. However, when he saw Li Gan's donkey face, he could not help but roll his eyes. He got up and cupped his fists. "Everyone, I'm Zhang Feng. What can I do for you?" Everyone saw. They hurriedly bowed with various etiquette. Student Zhang San greets the teacher. Student, greets the teacher. Greetings the teacher. Voices rang out in unison at the entrance of this small mountain gate. In an instant, everyone in the White Pants Academy heard it. Everyone forgot what they were doing and stared blankly at the mountain entrance. The large group of young people were dumbfounded. Damn, what's going on? Where are the bandits going up the mountain? Why are they all kowtowing to Feng Zi? Damn, could it be that imperial edict? Hiss. At the thought of this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Seeing more and more people at the mountain entrance and hearing more and more laborers gathering behind them, Zhang Feng and the others finally exploded. Qing Chimo slapped the back of his head and shook Zhang Feng's shoulder in horror. He asked in a trembling voice, "Damn, are these all the students who came up because of the imperial edict? I'm going crazy. Who are these people? They came in a group." Chapter 617. At the mountain gate, in the eyes of everyone, Zhang Feng was wearing a Confucian robe. Although he was standing quietly in the wind, he gave people the feeling that he was so elegant and free. At this time, everyone only felt that Zhang Feng was like a great Confucian, lowering his head and pondering. And they all knew the masters behind Zhang Feng. After all, who dared not to know the four great devils of Chang'an? And they were of the same age. Needless to say, Zhang Feng was actually able to make them submit to him. They did see Li Qingxian when he was riding a horse and running wildly. At this time, seeing Li Qingxian sitting there with scars on his neck and the back of his hand, how could they not know that he was beaten? Who hadn't experienced it? But who was this? This was one of the four great devils. He dared to beat him. And he beat him so obediently. Damn. This Zhang Feng was indeed not ordinary. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't speak, everyone became more respectful and couldn't help but lower their backs. Behind them, more and more people rushed to the mountain gate. The mountain gate couldn't hold them, so they stood on the hillside near the mountain gate and bowed respectfully. And behind Zhang Feng, Gan Ziyuan, Eunuch Gao, Ma Zhou, Jing Tufu and his son all came. Looking at the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. At this time, Li Qingxian was also frightened by the people behind him. Not for anything else, but because there were too many people. How much food was there on the mountain now? Are these people here to eat up the rich? He glanced at Du Go, who was actually hurriedly flipping through the account book. Several people unanimously refused to stand beside Zhang Feng and hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, aren't there too many people?" "So many people, my God, are they here to eat the rich? What should we do? Do you want me to ask the servants to drive them away?" It was fine if Li Qingxian didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, Zhang Feng exploded. He grabbed Li Qingxian's shoulder and shook him desperately. "Why? Why didn't you say so earlier? Why didn't you say so earlier? Where did you go earlier?" Li Qingxian was speechless. Motherf asterisk cur, the moment I went up the mountain, you gave me a good beating. Now you're giving me a chance to speak. F asterisk ck. Then why didn't you tell me when you went up the mountain? Lao Tzu doesn't want to talk about it. What can you do about it? Zhang Feng knew that he was in the wrong, so he raised his middle finger speechlessly. What are you waiting for? Aren't you going to register it? Zhang Feng glared at Du Go and the others. Only then did they stifle their laughter and hurriedly move the things. Wei Shuyu and Xing Chimo, on the other hand, had nothing to do. They stood at the entrance, each holding a shoulder pole. They glared angrily at the crowd at the entrance and roared, "Shut up! Those who want to enter the academy, line up for Lao Tzu. Don't talk. Whoever dares to say a word will be kicked off the mountain by Lao Tzu. You, take your men and hold the line. Whoever dares to cause trouble, break their legs and throw them off the mountain." Ching Chimo's roar was very useful. At the very least, it intimidated the crowd. Zhang Sun Chong climbed up the sentry post and took a look at the foot of the mountain. He saw that the winding path from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain was densely packed with people, extending into the distant fog. Zhang Sun Chong couldn't help but gasp. Oh my God! Why are there so many people? Zhang Sun hurriedly climbed down the sentry post and pulled Zhang Feng, saying, "Fengzi, there are more people at the bottom of the mountain than on top of the mountain. There are at least 1,000 people. What should we do? There are so many people. Can our academy fit all of them?" When the others heard this, they were also shocked. They hurriedly gathered beside Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng frowned. However, there was not much worry in his eyes. This was the result that he wanted. It's just a few thousand people. It's not a big deal. Which school in the future doesn't have that many people? Zhang Feng glanced at Du Go and patted his shoulder, saying, Kid, do you know why I want to build a 3-story building? If we do it the way you said, even if there are 10 Shao mountains, it won't be able to fit so many people. Indeed. Even the Imperial College of the Tang Dynasty only had a few people. At most, it could only hold about 100 people, all right? However, what about White Deer College? The college had not been built yet, but there were already so many people. What would happen after it was built? What would happen then? Just this scene alone was enough to shock the world. Not to mention after the college was opened. However, what should they do with so many people? What about the admission procedures? Fengzi, there are so many people. Are you going to accept all of them? I've observed for a while. Among these people, there are many who just want to make a living. You want these people too? That's right, Fengzi. Are you going to accept all of them? You have to think carefully. Even the Imperial College only has about 100 people in a year. You can't do it. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. Looking at the crowd at the entrance of the mountain, he could not help but come up with a brilliant plan. How about this? Dabing, Li Gan, and Tai Nyo, I'll give you a heavy responsibility now. When they heard this, they hurriedly asked, what responsibility? The admission examination. Chapter 618. Admissions Assessment. This thing was actually a test to see if they had a good foundation and reaction time. He couldn't possibly recruit some idiots, right? However, Zhang Feng also considered some factors. After all, many of these people were born as bumpkins, and their ancestors were illiterate. However, it didn't matter. As long as you knew a craft, it would be fine. There was no shortage of things to do here. After all, there was a shortage of kills and bricklayers. Now, he had even opened a cement factory, and he needed people to do that. However, if you said you didn't even know how to do these, then why did you make a hammer? As a poor man in his teens, even if you knew how to weave straw sandals, it meant that you had the ability to support yourself. However, if you didn't even know how to do this, then, get lost. Lao Tzu didn't teach idiots and sluggards. This was Zhang Feng's principle. under Zhang Feng's detailed explanation. The eyes of these people were shining. However, Qing Chimo also made a constructive suggestion. Feng Zi, what if there's someone like me who also has boundless strength? Look at that silly big guy. Damn, he's a talent. If he doesn't have strength, then it's really a waste of his tendons. Qing Chimo pointed to a tan strong man and said. Zhang Feng glanced at that man and was a little surprised. He was 2 meters tall, wasn't he? So tall, okay, why don't we ask him to come and try? Okay. You, that tanned big guy, come here. Qing Chimo pointed at the man and beckoned him with his finger. The man pointed at his own nose, and after confirming that he was the one being called, he walked out of the crowd under the envious gazes of the crowd. Then, he bowed to Zhang Feng first. Then, he bowed to Qing Chimo and the others. I'm Gao Kansas, greetings to the teacher and the devil grandfathers. Gao Kan. Zhang Feng was surprised. In the blink of an eye. He grinned as if he had picked up a treasure. What a high level. F***ck. A famous general under Li Ji. Motherf***ker. First, he picked up Ma Zhou. Now, he picked up another one. He even managed to get a military general. However, even though Zhang Feng was already dancing with joy in his heart, there was no trace of joy on his face. It wasn't that he wasn't happy, but his strong mental fortitude prevented him from revealing a trace of surprise. Ahem, Gao Kan, let me ask you, can you read? Gao Kan shook his head, and his tanned face couldn't help but blush. Then do you know any craft? Does eating count? Zhang Feng held back his patience and pointed to the handcart at the entrance of the mountain, as well as the bags of food that each weighed 100 pounds. He asked, since you can eat so much and are so strong, can you lift this up? Oh. Gao Kan hummed in acknowledgement. Then, he walked towards the handcart. But just as he reached the handcart, he turned around and looked at Zhang Feng. He asked honestly, if I can lift it up, can I come here? Zhang Feng nodded. Qing Chimo impatiently urged, why are you wasting time? Hurry up. Can't you see that there are so many people waiting behind? If you dare to ask one more question, this young master will tear your mouth apart. Gao Kan glanced at Qing Chimo and smiled honestly. Then, under the horrified gaze of the crowd, he actually lifted the handcart up. Handcart. It was a handcart. Zhang Feng rubbed his eyes and counted the bags of food on the handcart. Those were the food prepared for the people on the mountain today. A total of 5 bags of food, and he lifted it up so easily. 500 pounds. This handcart was at least 100 pounds. How could he lift it up so easily? What kind of freaking monster was this? Not only Zhang Feng, but even Qing Chimo and the others were staring with their eyes wide open. The surrounding students who were preparing to enter the school couldn't help but gasp. Hiss. Oh my God, who is this big blockhead? I don't know. Damn it, did he grow up eating stones? Why is he so strong? What's the use of being strong? The school is a place to study and learn how to read. What's the use of being strong? Learning how to read? Hearing the exclamations of the crowd, Zhang Feng hurriedly rubbed his hands and asked him to put down the handcart. Okay, Gao Kan, put it down. Put down the cart. When Gao Kan heard that it was a cart of food, his eyes couldn't help but flash with excitement. He retracted his hand that was holding the axle and extended it towards Zhang Feng. Master teacher, I have been hungry for 3 days. If I put it down, can you give me a full meal? Zhang Feng's face darkened. He took a deep breath and thought about it. If he had this big blockhead as his follower, he wouldn't have to be afraid of Qing Chimo. Okay. I will give you enough food, okay? Okay. After getting the affirmation, Gao Kan put down the handcart and followed Zhang Feng. He looked at him like this, which made Zhang Feng's hair stand. Old he, bring him to eat. After the meal, let him wait for me in my study room. After arranging Gao Can, Zhang Feng looked at those people again. His eyes couldn't help but emit a fiery glow. Talents like Ma Zhou and Gao Can had appeared. Then, Hao Chujun and Li Yifu should be here too. Chapter 619. Zhang Feng was looking forward to it. Looking at the crowd, he sorted out his emotions and made his voice sound even more dignified. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that all of you wish to join the White Deer Institute. Of course, we will accept you, but we won't accept just anyone. There must be rules, and the reason why our White Deer Institute was able to obtain the recognition of His Majesty is precisely because we broke the barrier of convention. That's why we can stand proudly here. I, Zhang Feng, am fortunate enough to become the Chancellor of the White Deer Institute, so I have to follow the rules. Confucius once said, "You can't give up on books." In this world, there is no free food. Therefore, the first rule of entering the White Deer Institute is that you can either write, read, or know how to make a living. Otherwise, you can be like Gao Kansas. Not to mention lifting this cart, as long as you can lift 2 sacks of food, my White Deer Institute will accept you. However, if you can't even do this, then this construction site still needs manpower. You can treat it as if you're looking for a place to make a living. There will be enough food. What? What kind of rule is this? The imperial edict didn't say anything like this. Prince Zhang, why are you doing this? That's right. We are all poor people. How can we be literate? If we were literate, we wouldn't be. Bam! The moment Zhang Feng finished speaking, everyone who came out of the mountain gate was in an uproar, like a pot of boiling water. While they were chattering, Qing Chimo suddenly punched a log that was as thick as a rice bowl. Instantly, the log broke into 2 under everyone's horrified gazes. Qing Chimo imitated Zhang Feng's mannerisms. He put his hands behind his back and shouted pretentiously, "This is the rule. This is the rule here. If anyone doesn't follow the rules, this log will be their example. Now, let's begin the registration." His act was perfect, but Li Qingxian and the others behind him stared straight at Qing Chimo's swollen right hand behind his back. They couldn't help but silently give him a thumbs up. Awesome! Awesome! That was awesome. In order to act cool, he even gave up his hand. And Qing Chimo's voice was enough to deter them. At this moment, everyone finally behaved themselves. Zhang Feng glanced at the crowd and left in a hurry. After all, this silly Gao Can still needed to be taught a good lesson. After Zhang Feng left, Li Qingxian and Du Go brought up a square couch and placed it at the entrance of the academy. Zhu Zi carefully waited on the side, grinding for Li Qingxian and Du Go. Ever since Zhu Zi and Go Zi followed Li Qingxian and Du Go, their image had changed drastically. This was especially true for Li Qingxian and Du Go. It was almost as if they were comparing themselves to each other, directly treating the 2 of them as page boys. This caused Zhang Feng to grit his teeth. At this time, Zhu Zi was wearing a green and white errand boy outfit, with 2 white silk ribbons tied around his head. With this outfit, he turned from a clay doll on the street into a handsome little errand boy. This was simply like a chicken turning into a phoenix. After the 2 of them set up their desks, Qing Chimo, Zhang Sun, Chong, and Wei Shuyu followed suit and set up 3 desks. However, they were all made of wooden planks. After all, the 3 of them didn't rely on their writing skills, but on their skills. Behind the 3 of them, Qing Chimo was actually following Steamed Bun. To others, this fellow would frown coldly, but to Steamed Bun, he doted on her more than Steamed Bun's father, who was also Zhu Zi's father. At this time, she was eating malt candy and wearing a silk dress. Although she was only 8 years old, it could be seen that she was a beauty. At this time, Steamed Bun was also quite obedient. She kept calling Qing Chimo, Brother Nyo, which made Qing Chimo's heart jump. Qing Chimo hugged Steamed Bun with one hand and held a military book with the other as he shouted angrily. "If you have some strength, come here and fight with me. If you can make me feel pain or make me cry, then you pass. If you can't, then you have to carry 2 bags of food for me and run around the Shao Mountain. If you can't, then you have to teach me a military book. That's right, Zhang Wuji said. If you know how to cook, come here and register with me. If you know how to do business, come here. Wei Shuyu and Zhang Sun weren't so lucky. The 3 of them picked the good ones one by one. The 2 of them picked 2 strong young men who looked smart. In just a short while, White Deer College's enrollment process could be considered to have begun. After everyone pondered for a while, they obediently lined up in a long line under the intimidating sight of the wooden log and the angry glares of the fierce servants. You, what's your name? Wang Erniu. Can you read? I can read. If I want to write, I can only write my name. Alright, write 1 and pay 1 copper coin. Wang Erniu was taken aback. Sir, didn't they say that it's free? Li Qingxian was furious. It's free? You think the ink and paper are free? You don't even have 1 copper coin. Do you think this is a charity hall? Scram if you don't have money. Wang Erniu's face turned green and white. At this moment, Hao Chujun blocked Wang Erniu and cupped his hands. Brother, I'll pay this fellow's 1 copper coin. Li Qingxian looked at Hao Chujun in astonishment. Then he ticked Wang Erniu's name and pointed down him to 1,000. Did you see those houses being renovated when you went up the mountain? Take this to the manager and tell him you're going to register. Wang Erniu was taken aback. Li Qingxian roared impatiently, anyone who registers here must personally participate in the construction of their houses. This is also considered an entrance examination. If you can't even do it yourself, you'll be the scum of the Tang dynasty once you leave the academy. Those who want to enter White Deer College, listen up. Next. Wang Erniu was taken aback. Finally, he cupped his hands at Hao Chujun and left. Name. Hao Chujun of Anzhou. Chapter 620. Even if they only needed to register a name, and then take out the certificate issued by the official of the place where the household registration was located. Even so, it lasted from around noon all the way to the evening before it finally ended. At this time, Li Qingxian and the others looked at Gao Can, who was standing behind Zhang Feng like a wooden stake, and were speechless. They didn't know what Zhang Feng said to this thing, but it actually made him follow Zhang Feng wholeheartedly. Li Qingxian and the others looked at the 9 feet tall Gao Can and couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh. In the future, it would be impossible to abuse Zhang Feng again. This guy also learned to be smart. But this was not the point. The point was that this guy actually looked at the name on the registration book and actually laughed wretchedly. Everyone couldn't help but watch it. Ching Chumo even whispered something in Steamed Bun's ear, and then Steamed Bun actually ran over and said crisply, Brother Feng Zi, Brother Niu said that your smile is so wretched. Zhang Feng heard this and his face instantly twisted. Gao Can, who was standing behind Zhang Feng, glared and was about to beat Steamed Bun. Zhang Feng was so scared that he hurriedly blocked Gao Can, touched Steamed Bun's head and said, You go and tell him that I said to let him pick up feces tomorrow, or I'll deduct his credits. PFFF, ha ha ha. Ha ha ha, Iron Yo, you have nothing better to do. You dare to make such a joke with Feng Zi. Now you've gone too far, right? Ching Chumo looked at Zhang Feng with disdain and said lightly, Steamed Bun, your brother Feng Zi asked you to pick up feces tomorrow. Are you going? No, Brother Niu will pick. Steamed Bun blinked his eyes and looked between Zhang Feng and Ching Chumo. Then his answer made Ching Chumo scared. Okay, you guys go back to sleep. Let's discuss what to do next. Zhang Feng was too lazy to say anything more. To be able to recruit Gao Can today was simply picking up a treasure. This fellow was recorded in history as being ranked 5th in the late Tang Taizong period and the early Li Ji period. If he could recruit such a ferocious person as his subordinate and properly train him, he would be a great help to him in the future. What's more, Hao Chujun, Li Yifu, and the others were also here. How could he not be excited? Guzi, Zhu Zi, and steamed bun had all left, but that hothead Gao Ken was still standing behind Zhang Feng, unmoved. Li Qingxian and the others also looked at him speechlessly. Seeing this, Zhang Feng curiously turned around and saw that this guy was still standing there. He said, "Gao Ken, go to sleep. If you don't sleep, go guard the door for me." "No, you said it. If you want me to stay close to you, then I will stay close to you." "Fine. Then you can stand." Zhang Feng was too lazy to speak, but he was also a little confused. Was this still the 5th-ranked general? How could this be an iron fool? But at this time, he couldn't care so much. He knocked on the roster and said, "How many people did you recruit today?" 1125 people. "I think there will be more later, but it shouldn't be as scary as today." "But Feng Zi, with so many people, how do you want to handle it? If you teach alone, won't you be King tired to death? Do you want to invite old Xiaocai and Mr. Li Gang up here?" Li Qingxian put his hands on the table, his face solemn. With so many people, although all of them had joined the construction at the construction site, it was not a long-term solution. One day, these things would be built, but what about after it was built? They had to teach, right? What to do? Zhang Feng coughed and said, "I just thought about this. The people we recruited today are very good. There are a few very good seedlings, such as Li Yifu, Lai Ji, and Hao Chujun. These guys need to be taken care of." Zhang Feng was silent for a moment, then looked at Qing Chumo and the others and said, "Do you know something called military science?" "What? What's military science?" The few of them were confused. Li Qingxian frowned and asked, "Are you talking about studying military books? That stuff is not something the academy should. F***ck, don't tell me you want to teach this stuff." Li Qingxian seemed to have thought of something and asked in surprise. Zhang Feng nodded. "That's right. Now it's time to divide the subjects. I know you don't know what subjects are, and I can't be bothered to explain it to you. You will understand later. But there's one thing you have to remember. Since I have opened a unique academy, then I have to completely separate myself from these things. First, everyone must learn mathematics. De Bing, make something to memorize. When the time comes, we will divide the subjects." Du Go heard this and hurriedly took out a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Li Qingxian also helped to grind. At this moment, Zhang Feng said, "Physics and mathematics." Majored in mathematics, physics, and chemistry. Actually, these three can be grouped into one thing, and that's called science. However, mathematics is the foundation, and it's something that must be learned. As for science, only people at your level are qualified to learn it, or very talented people can come into contact with it. Otherwise, this thing can cause a big problem if it's not handled properly. Hence, we have to use our own people. There's also medicine, military science, business science, and technical science. As Zhang Feng spoke, he organized the subjects that needed to be learned in primary schools in the future, combined with the situation in the Tang dynasty, and then explained in detail. However, it took Zhang Feng 6 hours to explain all these things in detail. Li Qingxian and the others only felt dizzy. Du Go looked at the few of them and said, "Fengzi, can you say it again? I didn't hear it clearly just now." "I was just recording." Chapter 621. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't hear him clearly. They had already recorded it. How could they not hear him clearly? That was simply nonsense. However, these things were too unbelievable for him. They couldn't help but feel incredulous. Li Qingxian sorted out his thoughts, took a deep breath, and asked, "Fengzi, we've heard of physics before. We also know about mathematics. But what is this chemistry you mentioned? What's the use of this stuff? And medicine. Is this the purpose of you inviting Dr. Sun Simiao up the mountain? Also, military, this stuff. Are you going to find the group of veterans from the reclining workshop to teach these students? Isn't this nonsense? These were too unbelievable. Not to mention other things, they all knew about business. In fact, it was the art of merchants. They knew this before. There was also this technical school. But military medicine and science, what the hell were these? It was too unbelievable. Even if you said that you were studying the 8 trigrams of Zhou Yi or something, it would still make sense. If you were studying something like Sun Tzu's Art of War, it would still make sense. But you directly said that it was military. Zhang Feng didn't care about this and knocked on the table. Do you still remember the matter of dealing with Tubo and the Turks? In fact, although this seems to be national policy, it's not completely true. This is actually military science. Sun Tzu's Art of War is actually military science. It doesn't include fighting and killing. Training to fight and kill is to see the overall quality of a soldier. Yes. I remember that I've told you before. I don't teach those who only know how to cut their throats with the radiographic films, nor do I teach those who only know how to talk on paper. I can't afford to lose face like that. What I want to teach is the kind of person who can be as awesome as Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, Li Jing, Qin Xiong, and Qin Shubao in the future. If it's an ordinary soldier? If I, Zhang Feng, can teach such a person, Lao Tzu will bang his head against the wall. They were shocked. Finally, they remembered what Zhang Feng said to them that night. He wanted Qing Chumo to be an invincible heavy cavalry. Wei Shuyu wanted to be an assassin without leaving a trace. And Zhang Sun? That goes without saying. Previously, after the appearance of the unbreakable shield and the unbreakable spear, as well as the recent events, they had really forgotten about it. But now that Zhang Feng said it again, everyone couldn't help but be shocked again. What was Zhang Feng doing? He was King teaching them real skills. No. Li Qingxian slammed the table in excitement. He stood up and roared. This gave Zhang Feng a big fright. What? Are you crazy? Li Qingxian didn't pay attention to Zhang Feng's words. Instead, he anxiously said, Feng Zi, if you only handed this matter to Tai Niu and us, then we wouldn't have anything to say. We are brothers, but you want to spread this information? Do you know that His Majesty has issued a decree forbidding the private distribution of military books? Do you know the reason? How could Zhang Feng not know? You don't have to worry about that. I know what you're worried about. It's nothing more than teaching some ungrateful brats that will rebel. Shoo! Li Qingxian hurriedly covered Zhang Feng's mouth. Zhang Feng waved his hand indifferently. I've thought about this matter many times. Look at the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Tubo, Turks, for example, Shirwei, Goguryeo, and so on are all around. As for what I teach, don't worry. I'll only teach the core knowledge to you. As for the rest, other than the academy, it's up to His Majesty to use them. These are not things that we need to worry about. But when it comes to selecting people, you'd better pay more attention. Do you know why I made mathematics the main course, medicine the auxiliary course, and poetry, books, etiquette, and so on as the auxiliary course? It's mainly to build their character. In fact, people are not bad at the beginning. It's only later that they'll be slowly driven by the interests and the wildness in their hearts. To teach military scholars, you must pass this test first. So you can rest assured. However, how could Li Qingxian be so assured? But he believed in Zhang Feng. In his hands, even he, the crown prince, was obedient, not to mention those bastards. If it really didn't work, thinking of this, Li Qingxian could not help but have a murderous look in his eyes. Just as Zhang Feng said, if they were not used by him, he would kill them. By the way, when will the physics class you mentioned start? And chemistry, what the hell is that? Is it more powerful than physics? Dugo had been thinking about physics all this time. At this time, when Li Qingxian finished speaking, he hurried before Qing Chumo and the others and asked this question. Zhang Feng could not help but be amused. Actually, it's not a big deal. Do you know why I set up a research institute? What do you think the research institute is going to do? Isn't it just ships and cars that can travel millions of miles in a day? Li Qingxian said so subconsciously. However, Zhang Feng shook his head. Wrong. What do you think the Tang dynasty lacks the most now? Food. Li Qingxian, Dugo, Qingchumo, and the others said in unison. Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. If I say that if this science of mine is developed, the Tang dynasty will not lack food. Even if it's a dry day, it will still be able to make the people full of food, would you believe me? Chapter 622. Li Qingxian and the others were completely shocked. Let the people fill their warehouses? Even the Emperor of Qin and the Emperor of Han didn't dare to say such a thing. How could a small research institute of White Deer College come up with such a thing? Since they were shocked, they hurriedly asked. However, Zhang Feng wouldn't say anything even if he was beaten to death. He only said a few words in a despicable manner. All you need to know is that the core of White Deer College is actually for the three big factories: the steel factory that is invulnerable, the loom that doesn't require manpower and can weave 3,000 feet of cloth in a day, and the rubber factory. That's all. As for the rest, you will know when the time comes. The core isn't the research institute? Dugo was dumbfounded. However, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at him. Li Qingxian then said dizzily, what Feng means is that this research institute is a secret of White Deer College that no one other than the few of us can know about. Dugo nodded in realization. He pointed at Gao Can, who was snoring like a wooden stake, and said, what about him? He heard it too. The others were speechless. What kind of godly person was this? How could he fall asleep at this time? No wonder Feng Zi would let this guy be his follower. Wasn't this 2F** king useful? However, there's still a main problem now, Feng. Zhang Sun spread his hands and said, no matter how awesome you say it, you still lack manpower. Don't tell me you're going to tire yourself to death with these thousands of people. When Zhang Feng heard this, he finally understood. It was true. There were so many people and he was alone. He was going crazy. Zhang Feng touched his mouth and pondered for a long time, but he couldn't think of a solution. This Chang and University was basically a cover-up and prepared for those who really didn't have much talent. After the first semester, those with poor grades would be sent over. If Li Gang still couldn't solve it, then they would be kicked out. This was also a way to make use of trash. It couldn't be revoked for now. In that case, there was really no one to use. Zhang Feng could not help but sigh. Previously, he was worried that no one would come. That's right. What I'm worried about now is where will the people come from to guide these guys? You can't expect me to teach them word by word, right? Wouldn't he be exhausted to death? However, it was still early. There was still time. Zhang Feng rubbed his throbbing temples and waved his hand. Go to sleep. I'll only say this once. Tomorrow, I'll go down the mountain and wander around Chang and city to think of a solution. Also, during this period of time, your task is to move all the books in your house for Lao Tzu to boost his reputation. Also, Li Gan, go and ask your father where his preface to the Orchid Pavilion is. How long has it been? It's time to fulfill the promise. The academy is too cold. Why don't you guys worry about it? You even say it's a good thing. Sigh. Zhang Feng scampered off amidst his nagging. All that was left was a group of people in a mess. What's wrong with Fengzi? If he wants books, just ask for books. Why did he have to make it sound so fresh and refined? Li Qingxian looked at Zhang Feng in disdain. Isn't this how he's always done things? Sigh. He's just pretending to be cool. It's really fresh and refined. Let's go to sleep. I want to ask my father for books. But, speaking of which, De Bing, without waiting for Li Qingxian to speak, Dugo clutched his stomach and screamed. Ouch! My stomach hurts. Everyone, take your time to chat. I'm leaving. Li Qingxian was speechless. He looked at Qing Chimo, then at Zhang Sun, and Wei Shuyu. Well, it seems that we'll have to rely on ourselves for this matter. The rest is easy. I can get some things from my place. However, there are still some strange books that I'll need the three of you to deal with. That shouldn't be a problem, right? What could they say? The Crown Prince had already spoken. Even if there was a problem, there would be no problem. Who could compare with Dugo? Qing Chimo did not mind. Anyway, although there were many books in his house, they were, in fact, obtained by his father to put up a front. As for the real good books, it would be up to Wei Shuyu to do it. This guy definitely had more strange books in his house than anyone else. Li Qingxian slapped his forehead, finally remembering an important matter. Worm, I remember that you have a book Wei Liaozi at home, right? When Zhang Sun heard this, his face could not help but turn a little ugly. I do have it, but this thing is my father's favorite. It's not easy for me to take it. It's fine. Just tell him that Fengzi wants it and he'll take it out for you himself. There's also the Book of Jin, the 3 Lu, and the 6 Tao. Have you heard of these things? Li Qingxian racked his brains and asked one by one. He had to make use of this good opportunity to get all these good things out. Even he only knew about these things when he chatted with Li Gang in the past. He really did not know where these things could be found. If he could make use of this opportunity to get his hands on them, then his life would not be in vain. As for Dugo, who was hiding outside the door, actually did not go to the outhouse because of a stomachache. When he heard that there were so many good books, how could he sit still? He hurriedly said, I know about this. Previously, when I was at the bad guy's house, I happened to hear him mention a book called the 6 Tao. It would have been better if he did not say anything. Once he said that, Li Qingxian and the others could not help but laugh evilly. I'll leave the rest of the books to you. It's your fault for having so many books. Chapter 623. The next morning. After saying goodbye to everyone, Zhang Feng went to Chang'an City leisurely on a roller coaster. Although Li Qingxian tried to persuade him to sit in the great scholar's sedan chair or ride his white horse, Zhang Feng didn't know how to ride a horse. Besides, he didn't want to be too conspicuous. At this time, some small vendors and stalls had already been developed at the foot of the ruined mountain. Even the traveling merchants had built a simple shed with trees and started to do small business in it. Not to mention that the business was not in Chang'an City. For example, the barbecue cellar. Now, the barbecue was mainly chicken and duck meat, which suited the taste of the hard work on the mountain. Even Qing Chimo and the others went down the mountain from time to time to make some barbecue and drink a big barrel of beer. Then they went up the mountain while humming a song. Not to mention the common people. After a day's work, they went to drink a bamboo tube of beer at night. Although they couldn't afford the barbecue, at least they could smell the fragrance and drink the beer. At this time, standing outside Chang'an City, looking at the modeled city wall, Zhang Feng had the illusion that he saw the city wall of Chang'an City in the future. Sparse people were going in and out listlessly. On the way, he saw some teenagers who were excited to go to the academy. Entering Chang'an City, the disaster victims in the city were obviously reduced a lot. Zhang Feng was a little puzzled. It seemed that the disaster was under control. But why were more and more people gathering on the mountain? It was not a good sign if it went on like this. Although there were 30,000 dawn of grain, the original 5 or 6,000 people, plus the current 1,200 people, were almost 10,000 people. With so many people, the 30,000 dawn of grain would be used up. No, he had to find a way. The streets of Chang'an were very clean. Most of them were peddlers, but the pedestrians on the street were much less. At the gate of the treasury, there were still some refugees waiting to be given porridge, but there were not as many as before. Along the way, Zhang Feng was also thinking about how to get rid of this thing. After all, it would be a big problem if he just sat there and did nothing. Just as Zhang Feng entered Tong Hui Fang, he was spotted by a few women. Yo! Feng Zi, you're back. Everyone, come out quickly. Quietly, Feng Zi is back. Feng Zi, you're back. Come out. The originally quiet Tong Hui Lane was filled with shouts. Gradually, people came out of their homes and stood on both sides of the road, looking at Zhang Feng. Instead, he left him a straight path to the tavern. Zhang Feng was speechless. Was it necessary? Wasn't it just a trip out? Why were they all so polite? Zhang Feng could only grin like an idiot as he clasped his fists and thanked everyone. With great difficulty, he finally made it to the tavern. Zhang Feng finally let out a deep sigh of relief. He took a piece of smoked bacon and threw it into the pot to wash it. Then, he set up the firewood and took out a jar of good wine. He lay down on the recliner and swayed gently. It was still more comfortable to be at home. However, just as Zhang Feng cooked up 3 dishes and was about to have a good drink before going to look for Lao Li, someone knocked on the door of the tavern. Brother Zhang Feng? Brother Zhang Feng? Who is it? It's me, Lao Feng. Lao Feng? Zhang Feng was a little surprised. However, he still put down the wine jar and opened the door of the tavern. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Feng Xianling squinting and stroking his beard while sizing up Zhang Feng. Beside him was an old man in a purple robe with white beard and gray hair. His face was ruddy, but his nose was extremely red as if he had been scalded by boiling water. The old man looked a little strange, but his arrogant aura was emitted from the inside out. It was impossible to fake it. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Oh, Lao Feng is here. This is... Feng Xianling stroked his white beard and glanced at Zhang Feng mysteriously. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he pushed Zhang Feng away a little and respectfully invited that person into the tavern. As soon as he entered the tavern, that person saw the poem on the wall. He couldn't help but look a little awe-inspiring. This, young friend, is this the poem you wrote? Zhang Feng couldn't figure out who this person was, so he could only nod. I was drunk and randomly drew it. I didn't have time to clean it up. Excuse me, sir. The old man's face became serious. Such a good poem. If you clean it up, wouldn't it be a pity? It's good like this. It added some liveliness to your tavern. Toasting, don't stop drinking. This is the poetry that a tavern should have. Good poem, good poem. Zhang Feng was also puzzled. The mystery of Lao Feng and the old man made him somewhat unable to figure out the old man's background. Could it be the emperor? No. Could he invite Li Shimin? Moreover, Li Shimin wasn't that old, okay? Although Zhang Feng hadn't seen Li Shimin, he still remembered this history. At this time, Li Shimin was about 40 years old. If you say he was Li Yuan, he didn't look like it. Moreover, if these two went out of the palace, wouldn't it shake the heaven and earth? How could it be so calm? No. This person wasn't these two at all. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask, "Excuse me, sir, you are, I'm Yu Shernan." Chapter 624. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He was completely dumbfounded. Yu Shernan? This master was a renowned literary giant of the Great Tang, a great Confucian of his generation. Moreover, he was one of Li Shimin's favored men. Moreover, he was highly accomplished in politics, poetry, and calligraphy. Especially the Beitang Book of Banknotes, which was a great work. To be able to leave behind a work of authorship in this era, how awesome was that? Just think about it. But now? I can't believe I actually saw a living person in my tavern. After a moment of surprise, Zhang Feng hurriedly wiped his hands on his clothes and habitually reached out to shake Yu Shernan's hand. However, after reaching out, he realized that this wasn't a proper etiquette at all. He hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed. Student Zhang Feng is here to pay respects to Senior Bo Shi. Generally, when people saw Yu Shinan, they would respectfully address him as the great Confucian scholar, but Zhang Feng was different. Who asked Lao Li to be so capable that he even got him the identity of a great Confucian scholar? Unbeknownst to Li Qingxian, Zhang Fengxi's poetry collection had passed through old Li's hands. Afterwards, he had shown it to Yu Shinan, Chu Suiliang, and the others. Then, under the witness of these four masters, Zhang Feng became a great Confucian scholar without anyone noticing. Moreover, the inscribed board of the Cheng, an academy, had the signatures of these four masters. This thing was a golden signboard in the Tang dynasty. Generally, if a person wanted to become a great Confucian scholar, at least 10 great Confucian scholars had to jointly recommend him, and then he had to make a backup record in the Imperial College, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Supreme Court. Only then would the Imperial Court issue a document. But that was not all. You also had to be recognized by the Shandong gentry. You had to get a great Confucian jade plate issued by the Shandong gentry, which was equivalent to an identity card. Don't ask why the Shandong gentry had such qualifications, because they considered themselves as the descendants of Confucius. Who in the world dared to offend them? Who would dare to question him? At this moment, Yu Shinan also accepted Zhang Feng's bow. This was the etiquette of a junior greeting an elder, and not the etiquette of a student greeting a teacher. If it was someone else, it wouldn't be appropriate, but Zhang Feng was different. On one hand, he was a junior. On the other hand, he was recommended by Yu Shinan. This was equivalent to being Yu Shinan's student. At this moment, Yu Shinan stroked his beard and personally helped Zhang Feng up. Fang Xianling had been eating by himself for a long time. I say, the two of you, don't just stand there. Brother Bo Shi, this is Zhang Feng's signature dish and his signature wine. You won't be able to drink it anywhere else in the Tang dynasty except here. As soon as he heard about the wine, Yu Shinan's eyes couldn't help but be attracted by Fang Xuanling's wine bowl. He ignored Zhang Feng, sat down, grabbed a piece of braised bacon, and urged Fang Xianling to pour wine for him. A bowl of wine went down his stomach. Yu Shinan's red nose was like a piece of red-hot iron, so red that it was shining. Ah! Good wine. This is good wine. Ha ha ha, come on, little friend Zhang Feng, sit down, let's talk while eating. Okay. Zhang Feng agreed. He was about to say a word of thanks, but he held back for a long time and couldn't say it. The problem was, this was his pub, wasn't it? Zhang Feng could only sit down embarrassedly and eat and drink by himself. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, the 3 of them drank 5 large jugs of 15% white wine. Only then did they feel dizzy, touched their stomachs, and burped. Little friend Zhang Feng, you're going to treat this wine like a treasure? Yu Shinan said very bluntly. What he meant was, you're going to hide something good. You don't want people to know? However, Zhang Feng knew that if this sentence was said by Lao Li, it must be directed at the wine. However, this was Yu Shinan. How could he not think about what he said? Zhang Feng thought for a while, then said, Mr. Bo Shi, you're joking. Although this wine is good, it's precious because it's rare. I also know that it's better to enjoy it with others than to enjoy it alone. However, this wine needs people who understand it to taste it. Those who only know how to drink like a donkey won't understand the true essence of this wine. Yu Shinan smiled. Little friend, are you saying that White Deer College is also like this? No. Mr. Bo Shi, you're joking. The college is a place to educate people. How can it be compared to wine? But do you know that the path of a teacher is not easily taught? I know. However, although I've waived the entrance fee, every student has to work at White Deer College to pay off their debts. Hearing this, Yu Shinan's interest was piqued. Then tell me, how do you intend to pay off your debts? How come I've heard that you're using work as a substitute? Zhang Feng knew that this old man was here to ask about this. After all, the stubborn scholars of this era all believed that books should not be studied for nothing. This was also the reason why scholars in this era were superior to others. However, Zhang Feng did the opposite. He directly let everyone have books to study. Wasn't this a huge taboo? However, the reason why no one came to find trouble with him was mainly because of Zhang Feng's unimaginable philosophy of running a school and those incomparably complicated subjects. Everyone thought that he was just fooling around. On the other hand, this college, in the eyes of the people at the top, was actually just a toy for the crown prince. Chapter 625. Zhang Feng said after pondering for a while. Mr. Bosher, may I ask how many literati there are in this world? Less than one level. Zhang Feng asked. Then may I ask if these people can pick up their swords and go to the battlefield to kill the enemy when the country is in danger? Yu Shinan thought for a while, and his face became serious. No. Well, may I ask Mr. Bosher, why should the literati be one level higher than the common people? Why is that? In this time of famine, it is the literati who suffer. Can what we learn from books help the world? When the country is in danger, can these literati protect the country? Yu Shinan's face changed. He sighed and said, no. Zhang Feng also sighed. He pointed out the window and said, the literati of the Tang dynasty occupy one level, but they have a salary every day. The poor people can only face the yellow soil. They are like peonies surrounded by the common people. Think about it, if a garden is full of weeds and yellow soil, won't it be beautiful? If there are not only peonies in this garden, but also other flowers and plants to serve as a foil, then what would it be? This is a garden of flowers. The former is like the current situation of the Tang dynasty. I am not talented, but I can't bear to see that there is only one peony left in this beautiful picture of mountains and rivers. Therefore, I use my own strength in this way to add a little green to this garden. Yu Shinan's entire body turned solemn. And so did Feng Xianling. In fact, he came to Zhang Feng's place today because he was pestered by Yu Shinan. In Li Shimon's study, Yu Shinan accidentally learned about Zhang Feng's calligraphy and found a poem that didn't belong to the collection in Feng Xuanling's study. He couldn't help but be interested. But he didn't know. The poetry collection that Li Shimon had shown him was only half of it. To be precise, it was not even half of it. It was just that Li Shimon picked out a few poems and didn't let him finish reading them. However, all of this had shocked Yu Shinan, which was why he had strongly recommended Zhang Feng. But now, Yu Shinan had a deeper understanding of Zhang Feng. This guy looked a little rash, but when he said that, Yu Shinan really saw a different side of him, especially Zhang Feng's view of the current Tang dynasty. It was not something that a person of his age could understand. Little friend Zhang Feng, you're right, but people are divided into different grades and ranks. This is something that has existed since ancient times. Don't tell me that you think this is wrong. When people are just born, there is not much difference. As long as they have enough to eat and wear, it is enough. The difference is what happens after they have spiritual wisdom. At this time, the differences between people will be revealed one by one. Some people, with a teacher taking the lead, are like an old cow teaching a calf to plow the field and pull a cart. With some teaching, they will make faster progress. Without teaching, they will naturally make slower progress, and even live in ignorance for the rest of their lives. Without considering a monster like you, the difference between those who have read books and those who have not can be reflected. Thus, the division of the upper and lower, the division of the 3 grades and 9 ranks, and the division of the social class, came out. In ancient times, people practiced slash-and-burn cultivation, and it was difficult for them to survive. That was why there were groups of people for warmth and ethnic groups. After living in groups, they got more food, and there was trade between ethnic groups. And this led to a few things. Some people got more, and some people got less. Therefore, there was selfishness, that was why there was everything after that. At birth, people are good by nature. Their natures are similar, but their habits are different. Yu Shinan said this very slowly. And the essence in his eyes made Zhang Feng a little shocked. But this was a matter of philosophy. Zhang Feng nodded and said, I know what Mr. Bosher means, but just now you said that people are good by nature. Their natures are similar, but their habits are different. That is to say, everyone should be equal. Wrong. Yu Shinan waved his hand. He sighed and said, if that is the case, it is really beautiful, but do you think it is possible? Yes. The reason why there is a division of the upper and lower, and the division of the social class, is to better survive. If there is no one who centralizes power and controls power, then who in the world will have a good life? Take the three kingdoms as an example. How do you think the people lived in troubled times? Zhang Feng also fell silent. Yu Shinan said, boy, I know what you are thinking. You just want to create more useful people for the Tang dynasty. This is a good idea, and I support your approach. But you have to remember one thing, and that is nature. Don't forget nature, otherwise. Zhang Feng's face was solemn. How could he not know what Yu Shinan meant at this time? He couldn't help but take a deep breath and bow. This student has learned something. Ha ha ha, you are worth teaching. Brother Feng, you've won. Yu Shinan laughed heartily. Then, he waved his hand and motioned for Zhang Feng to get the wine. Zhang Feng fetched a jar of wine and personally poured it for Yu Shinan. However, at this time, Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something. Chapter 626. Didn't he go down the mountain because of this matter? Now that this person had taken the initiative to come knocking on his door, it seemed that this collection of poems was still useful. Tomorrow, he would have to distribute all the poems so that those great scholars would take the initiative to come knocking on his door. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help sighing with a sad face. Old Mr. Bosher, there's something you don't know. Although I have the intention of teaching and educating people, I can't cook without rice. Fang Xianling glanced at Zhang Feng. How could he not know what this guy was up to? But he couldn't say anything. After all, he knew the situation on the mountain. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng's appearance, Fang Xianling could only help him and said, Brother Bosher, you didn't go to Feng Zi's place, but my son has been there for more than 10 days. The last time he came back, I heard that there were basically shacks there. You don't know, right? This guy emptied his family's property in exchange for 20,000 dawn of grain. Without his 20,000 dawn of grain, the price of grain in Chang and city would be 10 times higher. Hearing this, Yu Shinan couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng in surprise. He stroked his beard and nodded. That's right. Practice what you learn and apply it. This is my role model for scholars. Don't worry, if you have any difficulties, just tell the old man. Although the old man isn't as magnanimous as you, and doesn't have 20,000 dawn of grain, there are many students from the old man. When the time comes, I'll write a letter to ask them to help the academy, and also show my sincerity. Hearing this, Zhang Feng hurried to the left. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Bosher. Yu Shinan laughed heartily. The three of them drank a cup of wine and saw that Zhang Feng was still frowning. Yu Shinan asked again. It seems that you have something that you can't tell me? Of course. And it was a big problem. Hearing this, Zhang Feng sighed again and nodded. Yu Shinan narrowed his eyes. Let's hear it. The old man wants to see who is so bold as to go against the academy issued by the emperor's imperial edict. Don't worry, old man will take care of this matter for you. Tell me, what exactly? Old Mr. Bosher, this isn't a matter of who's against you. Like I said before, I can't cook without rice. Yu Shinan put down a piece of bacon in surprise and asked, tell me about it. Seeing that Yu Shinan had taken the bait, Zhang Feng said, everything is going well in the academy. In the past few days, we have accepted almost 1,000 students. If we count according to the number of students who have come to the academy in the past few days, it is estimated that there will be about 5,000 students. Yu Shinan couldn't help but cry out in alarm. So many people? What are you trying to do? Zhang Feng spread his hands. As this brat said, it's precisely to add some color to the great Tang's flower scroll. Moreover, I've opened up many subjects, which is why so many of these poor people are flooding into my academy. I know what you are worried about. Yes, my academy does have a lot of people. However, only a few of them may soar to the sky, but what about the rest? Although my academy is not like the Imperial College, where some people are selected from the root, the people who can graduate from my academy can basically escape from poverty. And the key lies in the subjects that I have set up. Yu Shinan heaved a sigh. In fact, Yu Shinan had long heard of Zhang Feng's unimaginable teaching philosophy. To be honest, in the beginning, Yu Shinan really didn't care about such things. He could find an experienced teacher in the market and learn for 3 to 5 years. Then he could reach a higher level and earn some money to support his family. Why did he have to come here? But when Zhang Feng mentioned the picture scroll, Yu Shinan couldn't help but accept Zhang Feng's idea. However, 5,000 people. One could imagine how much effort it would take to nurture all these people. If it was him, he wouldn't do it. However, the so-called subjects still aroused Yu Shinan's interest. Young friend, there are so many people. Are you sure they are all attracted by your subjects? That's what the old man couldn't figure out. In this academy, which one doesn't strive for excellence? It's easy for people like you to make up the numbers. Seeing that Yu Shinan was slowly taking the bait, Zhang Feng said, Mr. Bosher, although 5,000 people are a lot, it's still too little for the current Tang dynasty. I urgently hope that if there are 50,000 people, or even 500,000 people who can read, then the Tang dynasty can really be prosperous and the people can live in peace. What do you mean? It's very simple. Look at the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Basically, the trade and commerce has crossed Lingnan, Jinla, Tubo Turks, and other countries. But this is only a small number of people. And among these people, who can really understand some exquisite trade? Besides, the best and most popular things in the Tang dynasty are tea leaves, silk, and ceramics. But these things are basically in the hands of a small number of people. Think about it. When the time comes, the Tang dynasty is bound to start the age of navigation. At that time, how can these little things meet the needs of the foreign people? How can the Tang dynasty really become a prosperous country? So, there's only one word. The Tang dynasty is poor. Chapter 627. Yu Shinan was a little confused. What this kid said was wrong. Everything he said was correct. Basically, there was one thing in many things nowadays, and that was the wine. If everyone could open up this kind of brewing technique, wouldn't everyone be able to live a good life? But it was easier said than done. Could it be that this kid wanted to? Kid, are you saying that you're going to hand them all over the place in your academy? And the forging technique of the invulnerable shield and the invincible spear that you mentioned before? Yes. Zhang Feng slammed the table, and then picked up his wine glass and clinked it with Yu Shinan and Fang Xianling. Then he said, actually, old Fang knows my plan. Brother Bashi, you don't know yet, right? Let me tell you a secret. Don't tell anyone else. Seeing Zhang Feng pull him up, Fang Xianling couldn't continue sitting there. He whispered in Yu Shinan's ear, you should have heard of this thing called the mysterious scripture, right? This kid knows this stuff. Moreover, it is said that Mozi and Lu Ban comprehended part of it, and that's why they were able to comprehend that kind of strange skill. You don't know that the previous strategy against the Turkic Tubo and the other countries, and the lifting of the blockade at Guanlong, were all made by this kid. Yu Shinan couldn't help but think highly of Zhang Feng again. You mean, this thing was made by this kid? Fang Xianling glanced at Zhang Feng and said, not only that, the cooperative and the fine salt that you praised so much were also made by this kid. What? This time, Yu Shinan finally couldn't sit still. He had always thought that this was made by the emperor and several state dukes. But he didn't know that these things, from politics to national policy to business, were all made by this kid. He finally understood why Li Shimin and the others respected Zhang Feng so much. Thinking of this, Yu Shinan stared at Zhang Feng and asked, "If that's the case, then the beer and barbecue on the market were all made by you?" Zhang Feng shrugged. "Not only that, your favorite bone-strengthening powder was also made by this kid." Fang Xianling directly told Yu Shinan everything that had happened. Yu Shinan was so shocked that his mind was in chaos. The strategic planning of the nation, the things in the business world, and the lewd tricks, all of these were created by this kid? Was he even human? How was this possible? He couldn't link all of this to Zhang Feng. If it weren't for Fang Xuanling's words today, he would have thought that the locust-controlling stuff and the Nyang bone-strengthening powder were all Sun Simiao's doing. Right. Speaking of the locust-controlling stuff, it seemed that this kid was also the one who made it. Otherwise, if he had a way, Dr. Sun wouldn't have hidden it for so long. And there would be rumors about it in the outside world. What kind of freak was this kid? Had he really read that amazing scripture? Su Rian and the others had never seen that amazing scripture, but this thing had been widely circulated. At that time, it was rumored that Confucius got the amazing scripture and created the Book of Songs. Later, Mencius, Lao Tzu, and the others became the greatest Confucian scholars one after another. After that, although this amazing scripture was widely circulated, it had never appeared in the world again. Yu Shinan couldn't help but feel a little restless at this time. Who wouldn't read the amazing scripture? "My young friend, what are the subjects in your academy?" Finally, Yu Shinan asked the question in his heart. Hearing that, Zhang Feng said, in reply to Mr. Bo Shi, "My White Deer College's main subjects are the three-character classic, the Book of Songs, and mathematics. Poems, books, etiquette, and other things are supplementary. Among them, there are physics and chemistry. These things are the foundation of my academy, so only a very small number of amazing geniuses are qualified to sign contracts and study them. And among them, it includes the production and research of the textile machine that can be controlled and weaved day and night. There's also the research of the stainless steel, which is to make an impenetrable shield and an invincible spear. You should have heard that old Shen is setting up a car factory and a shipyard. These are the most sophisticated things. When the time comes, they will be researched in a place that I named the Research Institute. The others can also learn some basic things. There are also military studies, medical studies, business studies, forging, manufacturing, brewing, and other professions. Finally, I will temporarily set up 3 factories on Shao Mountain. One is a steel factory that specializes in mass production of shields, spears, crossbows, and so on. Another one specializes in brewing the tires of iron carriages and war chariots. The last one is the textile factory I mentioned just now. On one hand, it's to provide them with a lucrative career. And the other reason? It's also because they are poor. If you want to run this big academy, you will need a huge amount of money, so. Zhang Feng said everything that he wanted to say in an eloquent manner. However, he didn't explain what those subjects were. However, business studies, medical studies, and other skills were nothing more than craftsmen. Yu Shinan knew a little about them. Not to mention the skills of a chef. He had tasted Zhang Feng's skills when he was in the palace. He also knew a little about the brewing industry. However, there were only 4 subjects. He couldn't understand. Chapter 628. Little friend Zhang Feng, this old man knows about mathematics. I've also seen it in Lao Li's house. However, this old man still doesn't understand physics, let alone chemistry. Can you explain it to this old man in detail? Yu Shinan's curiosity was piqued. He knew a little about physics, as well as the magical division and multiplication table. He also learned some things from his conversation with Du Ruhui. Du Ruhui, who mastered this thing, was actually able to handle the complicated matters of food distribution, registration, storage, and so on. How shocking was this? If it was an ordinary person, facing thousands of people coming to buy food or exchange food every day, wouldn't it take dozens of people to handle it? This could not help but highlight the power of mathematics. But what was physics? Although he had heard of it, what he heard was definitely different from what Zhang Feng said. Zhang Feng also knew that Yu Shinan would ask this. He deliberately dragged it out and said, "Old man Bo Shi, actually, this is the highest level of mathematics. For example, if an illiterate person doesn't even know how to read, how can he learn the book of songs?" However, when Zhang Feng saw the displeasure on Yu Shinan's face, he hurriedly said, "The so-called physics is actually studying something. For example, how to use the power of nature to transport water to a mountain instead of using manpower. Also, how to make a caddy of iron and a caddy of cotton fall from a high place at the same time and land at the same time, etc. These are all more profound things. They all require the foundation of mathematics to be able to calculate things. Isn't this what the fraud is studying?" Yu Shinan instantly lost interest. "What about chemistry? What's that?" This, Zhang Feng was a little speechless. At this moment, he did not know how to explain it to Yu Shinan. There was no way to explain it. How to explain it? After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng said, "Do you still remember the thing I mentioned just now? My research institute is to study how to let the people eat their fill, wear warm clothes, and have a warehouse full of food. Also, about the ship." "Oh right, old Fang, have you told this to Mr. Bo Shi?" Fang Xianling shook his head. "I haven't told him yet. This thing hasn't been done yet. How can I tell him? But now that you've said it, I'll tell him, okay?" Fang Xianling pursed his lips and told Yu Shinan everything about the shipyard, the Sea Silk Road, and the car factory. Yu Shinan was dumbfounded. Especially the kind of iron ship that didn't need manpower to paddle and could move the ship. What kind of thing was that? This was something he had never heard of. What was this? This was the real lewd trick. Compared with the craftsmen who called themselves strange masters, if this thing was really built, the Tang dynasty would really enter the Golden Age. Plus, there would be endless food, those looms, and the invincible spears and crossbows. Although Yu Shinan did not agree with war, the foundation of a country was its military. If there was no strong military, how could the safety of the people be guaranteed? Zhang Feng, this brat, simply included everything from military, to business, to agriculture. This. Yu Shinan did not dare to think about it. He hurriedly asked, "Young friend, what you said, is it chemistry?" "Yes. These things, whether it's physics or chemistry, are all called science. But it's still too early to talk about these things. You can just think of it as fun. This thing still needs time to be revealed." People in this era did not understand these things at all. They did not even have the basic common sense of life. If you said too much, people would only think you were crazy. But the reason why Zhang Feng told Yu Shinan at this time was that this guy was the most representative Confucian scholar of the Tang dynasty. His academy needed such a person to hold the fort. Otherwise, Zhang Feng would not have bothered to say these things. After all, if he said it too early, people would only take it as a book. Only when he said it at the right time could it have an unexpected effect. Yu Shinan also understood Zhang Feng's meaning. He nodded and said, "Don't worry. I understand what you said. But, what's the matter with the military? Could it be that you want to train soldiers?" This was also what Yu Shinan was most puzzled about. Compared to science, that stuff was like a divine object that couldn't be found anywhere. But what about military? He instantly thought of the dirty scene in the garrison camp outside Chang'an City. This was simply like the difference between heaven and earth. How could it be possible to combine these two things that were originally completely unrelated? Moreover, it was in White Deer Academy. In fact, the military was also the purpose of Fang Xuanling's visit today. He was very worried that once this thing was revealed, it would inevitably cause ripples in the imperial court. At that time, it would not be a simple problem of the academy, but a political problem. Fang Xianling patted Zhang Feng's shoulder with a serious face and asked, "Fengzi, you have to think about it. Once this military course is revealed, do you know what the consequences will be? And military studies, isn't it just reading books? Could it be that you want everyone in White Deer Academy to study the art of war? Chapter 629. Not to mention Yu Shinan, even Du Ruhui couldn't help but worry. The military and the academy had always been at odds with each other. Otherwise, the civil and military officials wouldn't have fought against each other in the cottage. But what was Zhang Feng trying to do now? Was he trying to combine the two into one? How was this possible? There was always a taboo for soldiers, and that was to be involved in politics. It was the same for politicians. But what Zhang Feng was doing now, wasn't it? The two of them didn't dare to think further. That was why Fang Xuanling's expression suddenly changed. He was worried that if the imperial court knew that Zhang Feng's White Deer College was like this, it would become the target of the entire Tang dynasty. At that time, even if the emperor wanted to resist, it would be impossible. But Zhang Feng didn't seem to be worried about this. Instead, he waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about this, Mr. Bosher. Old Feng, you can rest assured. Do you think I'm stupid? How can I teach this to just anyone? Same old rules. To put it bluntly, this thing isn't made for ordinary people. Do you think this thing is made for ordinary people? Wrong. I made this thing for people who are prepared, like Tai Niu and the other extremely talented people." Fang Xianling seemed to understand, but Yu Shinan really didn't. Actually, from the very beginning, when he heard these brats talk about an impenetrable shield and an invincible spear, he had always felt a faint sense of worry. If you said that this thing was serious, it was really a serious problem. If you said that it wasn't serious, it wasn't a problem at all. Just as Zhang Feng said, Qing Chumo and the others were born in the military. Take Wei Zhang's son, Wei Shuyu and Fang Yai for example. At this time, they were all holding important positions. But which hot-blooded youngster wouldn't be attracted to studying or practicing martial arts? At this moment, Zhang Feng also gave an answer. Some people are obsessed with one thing the moment they are born. Or maybe they were influenced by their parents and chose their own path. Or maybe they were inspired by the heroes in the streets and yearned for the heroism of soldiers on the battlefield. And there are even more people who are addicted to books, unable to extricate themselves. For example, Du Dabbing. Old Fang, you should be able to understand why he is so obsessed with books, right? You're always running around outside, doing housework, and even working hard outside. When you return home, you'll pressure and criticize them. You must stand out. Of course, I'm not saying that your concern is wrong. It's just that you've been instilling things into your son for a long time. Have you ever thought about your son? As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. In the long run, their character will be determined from a young age. And my White Deer College can solve this problem from the root. First, from the moment you enter the college, if you don't have the ability, you should build a shelter for yourself. Lao Tzu doesn't want such a bookworm. The other type of person is the arrogant type. Lao Tzu will grind them until they don't even have the courage to raise their heads. This is a form of training. I once read a sentence in a book. A flower in a greenhouse will never be able to withstand the wind and rain. On the contrary, a person who has been exposed to the wind and rain for a long time will desperately want to climb up. What I want to do is to let the flower in the greenhouse have some time to grow. As for the person who has been exposed to the wind and rain for a long time, I will suppress the desire in his heart. So, young friend, you mean, Bosher finally couldn't take it anymore. Although what this brat said was right, but this was really long-winded. He couldn't take it anymore. Everything Zhang Feng said seemed to have no basis, but it was just right, especially the sentence, one is marked by the company one keeps. This was something that even the great Confucian scholars of this era couldn't fully understand. He could actually say something like that. Yu Shinan couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for him. As for the military concept that Zhang Feng talked about, Yu Shinan also started to look forward to it from the bottom of his heart. Yu Shinan couldn't help but ask again, young friend, What you said about one is marked by the company one keeps. Where did this sentence come from? Zhang Feng was a little confused. He scratched the back of his head, unsure if Yu Shinan actually didn't know about this. But when he saw Yu Shinan's expression, he said, "Isn't this a sentence from Jin Fu Xian's The Proclamation of the Crown Prince?" Don't tell me Mr. Bosher doesn't know. This was a famous sentence from the ancient times. He actually didn't know? A great Confucian scholar of this era didn't know? How could this be? When Yu Shinan heard this, he narrowed his eyes and thought for a long time. He had read Jin Fu Xian's The Proclamation of the Crown Prince and so on. But this was the first time he heard of this. But all of a sudden, Yu Shinan thought of something. That was the well-read Chu Suiliang. He didn't know where this guy was there such a rare book? He heard that this guy had been reading all kinds of unique books for the past 2 years. Could it be that this book was also unique? Otherwise, why hadn't he heard of it before? Chapter 630. However, Yu Shinan faintly felt that he had been led astray. After thinking for a while, he could not think of a single clue. He glanced at Fang Xianling and saw that Fang Xianling was not surprised. He could only temporarily suppress the doubts in his heart and asked, "Little friend, do you mean that you want to educate them from their roots?" "Yes." Zhang Feng slapped his thigh and once again thought of a famous saying, "Mr. Bosher, some people are great in life. They don't have to worry about tomorrow since they were born. They can live a life of luxury. But they don't think that sometimes, a meal or a drink is the dream of a poor student." Zhang Feng pointed to the meat and wine on the table and said, "Take the food on our table for example. This table is worth at least 100 coins, right? If it was in the hands of a rich family, it wouldn't matter. Isn't it just 100 coins? But have you ever thought that this 100 copper coins might be a harvest that a poor family wouldn't even dare to dream of in a year? Not to mention eating and drinking. If this trend continues for a long time, it will inevitably cause a catastrophe." Yu Shinan and Fang Xianling heard this and could not help but ask in unison, "What catastrophe?" In their view, this was just a normal thing. Zhang Feng lightly pointed to the door and said, "People have dreams. Just like how we think when we see such a table of delicious food before we go to school. It's bound to be. One day in the future, I will eat meat and drink wine like this. Isn't this normal?" Yu Shinan and Fang Xianling did not understand what Zhang Feng wanted to say. But after hearing this, they thought about it and nodded. "You're right. This is a normal reaction. But don't say it. This shouldn't be, right?" Zhang Feng sighed and put the wine cup on the table. He stood up and shook his head with his hands behind his back. "Wrong. Big and very wrong. In fact, this thing is called a dream. And there is another saying, it is called desire. Human desire is a terrible thing. Once it takes shape, this thing is enough to destroy a family, a city, and even a country." Buzz. This time, Yu Shinan and Fang Xianling really understood. If they still did not understand at this time, then there was really a problem. Previously, when Zhang Feng had not mentioned it, they had thought that it was something that humans should have. But at this time, when Zhang Feng said this, they carefully thought about what Zhang Feng said today. Yu Shinan could not help but ask, "Zhang Feng, little friend, you mean, you want to use military training to temper these people's temperament?" Zhang Feng gave Yu Shinan a thumbs up in approval. "Yes. That's my goal. Think about it, many of these people might enter the imperial court and become officials in the future. I don't want to be criticized behind my back when the time comes, saying, 'Ayaya, look, this corrupt official is from the White Deer Academy.' What is this? You are destroying your own reputation. And more importantly, you have seen the situation in the Tang dynasty now. The 3 lives and 6 ministries system, plus the system of recommendation for the imperial examination, basically, many talents are in the hands of those big families. And here, I am equivalent to a clear stream, not mixed with any interests. I only care about how many people I train. Under the premise of no interests, how can I not train the next generation of qualified successors? Yu Shinan heard this. He was a little touched. But more than that, he admired him. He stood up and bowed to Zhang Feng like a Confucian scholar. Zhang Feng was so surprised that he hurriedly stood up and bowed back. Yu Shinan let out a deep sigh. Presumably, this is all your military knowledge, right? Although Yu Shinan pointed it out, Zhang Feng's face didn't turn red at all. After all, if Yu Shinan, a great Confucian scholar, didn't think of these things, then Zhang Feng doubted whether his reputation in this lifetime was exaggerated. Yes. Mr. Bosher is right. These things are actually called psychology, mixed in every curriculum. And in military, these things are called psychological tactics. Think about it. Now, there are so many countries around the Tang dynasty. In the far west, there is the black-clothed Abbasid Caliphate, which is not inferior to the Tang dynasty, and some countries are even more powerful than the Tang dynasty. What I need is the skill sand table training, the ability to go to the battlefield to kill the enemy, and the ability to subdue the enemy without fighting under the condition of being familiar with military books. This, Yu Shinan smiled bitterly and interrupted Zhang Feng's endless speech. Young friend, don't say any more. Old man doesn't understand these things, and he doesn't want to understand them. This old man knows that this is your ability, and old man can't probe into it. But there is still a trace of confusion in my heart. I wonder if young friend can solve it. At this time, Zhang Feng was a little drunk. Obviously, he talked too much. At first, Yu Shinan didn't notice, but now, the more Yu Shinan listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. If he continued to talk, it wouldn't be a discussion of academics, but a discussion of military books. This was a taboo in literature. So he could only stop Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng choked for a moment. He wasn't angry. Waving his hand, he sat down again, clinked his wine cup with Yu Shinan, and said, Mr. Bosher, please ask. Yu Shinan then said, Old man has always been curious. Young friend, who is your master? Zhang Feng had long known that he was going to ask this question. After all, he had already thought of a set of excuses for this matter. Zhang Feng sighed, looking a little lonely. After 3 cups of wine, he said, let's not talk about this for now. Let's talk about something else. Chapter 631. Yu Shinan almost sprayed a mouthful of wine on Zhang Feng's face. He waited for a long time. That's all you said? Who dared to do this in the Tang dynasty? Except for the emperor, there were only a few people who dared to do this. However, Yu Shinan couldn't find any sign of anger. After all, it was a big taboo to rashly ask about someone's master. Zhang Feng was lucky that he didn't get angry. Although he knew that Fang Xianling had told him about Zhang Feng's master, he couldn't resist his curiosity. He could faintly hear the 8-front formation and the Zhuge legacy from it. However, he wasn't sure. After all, he hadn't studied this kind of military book. However, at this time, seeing Zhang Feng's lonely look, Yu Shinan knew that he couldn't ask. He could only go to Fang Xianling and ask, Brother Fang, this. Fang Xianling looked at Zhang Feng and then looked at Yu Shinan and said, in fact, I forgot to tell you this. This guy once said that he had cultivated on Wutai Mountain for 5,000 years and that Zhuge Kongming was his disciple. At first, Old Man also thought that this guy was talking nonsense, but now, Old Man felt that this guy's words could be combined with something in military books. Could it be? Shoo! Yu Shinan's expression changed drastically upon hearing this. He hurriedly covered Fang Xuanling's mouth. Brother Fang, you actually believe such a preposterous excuse? This is just this guy's nonsense. Although this is the first time I met this guy, although he is reliable, his mouth. Fang Xianling sighed and nodded. This is all because of this guy. If he could have a family, he wouldn't be so lonely. This guy was once hit hard. His family was originally a rich family in XX place. Because of a mountain flood, the whole family died. If he was a normal person, he would have done something. Yu Shinan fell silent. He finally understood why this brat was so out of tune and why he talked so much nonsense. This was all caused by loneliness. Yu Shinan couldn't help but sympathize with Zhang Feng. Young friend, old man knows that you're not feeling well, but people need to look forward. Think about it. Once your academy becomes famous in the Tang dynasty, won't you also have a meteoric rise? When the time comes, the proper thing to do is to help your Zhang family flourish. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He looked suspiciously at the two old fellows who were whispering to each other, wondering what they were talking about. However, he didn't want to listen to the whispers of the two old men. Borrowing Yu Shinan's words, he sighed and raised his cup to drink. Fine. Old Feng usually looked like an honest person. Who would have thought that this support would be so beautiful? However, Zhang Feng's face was still full of bitterness and hatred. He said, "Isn't that so? That's why I spent all my life learning and all my wealth to establish this White Deer College. That's why I thought that if I could pass the imperial examination 3 years later, I could enter the imperial court and take this opportunity to create more talents for the Tang dynasty. But, alas." Zhang Feng said a few words, but didn't know what else to say. He sighed deeply. After a while, he continued, "I know what old Mr. Bashi is thinking. Actually, let me tell you this. The psychology I mentioned just now is just a support. The real driving force of this academy still needs some foundation. For example, the training of these people's temperament is undoubtedly the kind of military training." Yu Shinan and Feng Xianling looked at each other and asked in unison. Military training? Is it the kind of drill in the military now? Zhang Feng shook his head and said with some disdain, "Those are just the fighting skills of children. I don't want to learn from them. The military training I mentioned is a complete system, including physical training, resistance to beatings, fatigue resistance, and even the ability to react in severe fatigue, etc. Those who can get through this stage, no matter if they are in the military, politics, literature, or business, at the very least, they will have a good physique and a good temperament. Those who do not have a strong temperament will be automatically eliminated in less than half a month. Do you think I'm really stupid? There are so many people who need to eat. Where can I get food for them? This way, I can let the flowers in the greenhouse have a chance to be tempered by the storm. As for the ordinary people, I can show them the hardships and sufferings of climbing up. This way, they won't go astray on the road of life." Zhang Feng used about 4 hours to tell Yu Shinan the complete content of the military training, as well as its benefits. Yu Shinan, on the other hand, was initially disdainful of Zhang Feng and somewhat resistant to his long-winded speech. Gradually, he was shocked by Zhang Feng's understanding of human nature. This was what truly shocked him. In the beginning, Yu Shinan had looked down on Zhang Feng, but in the end, he had taken the initiative to ask questions. Gradually, he had come to understand the situation. From today onwards, this kid was talking about military science. However, this also made Yu Shinan a little shocked. This was military science? If one had to make a comparison, the things that were popular in the military now were simply bullshit*t. If His Majesty knew about this military philosophy, how would His Majesty react? Chapter 632. Finally, he took the bait. Zhang Feng cheered in his heart. But at this time, Zhang Feng knew that it was the real beginning. After all, it was easy to persuade a great Confucian to come to the academy, but what about 3 great Confucians? It was not enough. Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask again with a bitter face, "Mr. Bashi, what do you think of my academy?" Yu Shinan shook his head with a wry smile. At the beginning, this guy wouldn't say a word of praise, but now? After showing all the good things, what could Yu Shinan say? He also wanted to see what Zhang Feng's academy could do, but at this time, he couldn't praise this little guy. He had to give him a warning. Yu Shinan stroked his beard and pretended to be deep in thought. Your academy is not bad. It's just a little unorthodox. Also, it's just a hodgepodge. There's nothing new about it. Zhang Feng's eyes widened. It's okay. Damn it. If you have the ability, go to the Tang dynasty and find me an identical one. Believe it or not, if you can find me, I'll ask for that person's WeChat and Weibo accounts. In this era, there was no one else who could have such advanced ideas except for people like him. And such an advanced education idea was a perfect teaching method that was implemented in almost all schools except the aristocratic schools. Military training. Although Zhang Feng didn't know the purpose for the time being, it might not have much effect in the future, but in the Tang dynasty, its meaning was very different. This was a turbulent era, and someone might make trouble for you at any time. What's more, in history, the Turks would really break with the Tang dynasty next year. The peace that Li Shimin exchanged with his white horse on the bank of the Wei River only lasted for more than a year. But at this time, even with his intervention, although the situation was reversed, would Li Shimin give up fighting the Turks? No. After all, the humiliation he had suffered at the hands of the Turks was something that no one would ever forget, needless to say, Zhang Xian. Furthermore, Zhang Feng had been to the reclining house and learned from the veterans what the military training in the barracks was like. After all, the Chang'an Navy was in Chang'an City, which could be seen from afar. Hee. That was simply pushing him to his death. What kind of training could a chaotic battle in a bandit's lair produce? According to Zhang Feng's knowledge, the Tang dynasty lost at least several thousand people every year, sometimes even tens of thousands of people. How did these people die? Wasn't it just a chaotic battle, coupled with military measures that didn't have the slightest bit of hygiene habits that killed them? However, none of this could be seen in White Deer College. He didn't have much hope that he could completely change the military camp. Besides, he didn't have the ability to do so. What he wanted to do was to start from White Deer College and transfer the disinfection of alcohol and the routine military training to the Tang dynasty. He wanted the academy to blossom in all aspects, be it moral, intellectual, physical, or aesthetic. This was the flower that he had mentioned to Yu Shinan before, the foil that he needed. At this time, when he heard Yu Shinan's evaluation of him, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel anxious. After all, this was his blood, sweat, and tears. He had basically dug out all his foundation, but in return, he was only told that it was okay? No way. This was definitely not okay. I say, Mr. Bosher, although my academy doesn't have a collection of books now, Lao Li owes me a collection of prefaces to the Orchid Pavilion. Also, I have arranged for Li Gan and the others to search for a large number of rare ancient books. Also, I still use the conventional teaching methods, such as the Book of Songs. Don't think that I only teach a little here. Moreover, the teaching time here is rationalized. In the morning, the military training begins at 5 in the morning. After that, there will be 2 hours of recitation of the Book of Songs and so on. After that, there will be a quarter of an hour break before teaching mathematics. After that, there will be a 2-hour break. The afternoon is divided into 3 segments. The first segment is the literature class of the 100 schools of thought. Then there's the common sense elective courses, such as medical theory and general knowledge, as well as the detailed division of manufacturing and military affairs. In the evening, there will be military training. If you still think that these are not enough, then this kid really has nothing to say. Although Yu Shinan was already extremely shocked, after exchanging glances with Fang Xianling, he forcibly suppressed his shock and said, "What you said is only your appearance. Don't you know about specialization?" This kid knows. Military training is to train their physique in the morning and at night. After high-intensity training in the morning, their nerves will be tired. If they read aloud at this time, it will be easy for them to remember. In the afternoon, it is the most drowsy time of the day. If you ask them to do things that require high concentration at this time, they will be pressed to the extreme. In my opinion, it is much better than rote memorization. The more Zhang Feng spoke, the more he felt that he was being polite. Yu Shinan was also deeply attracted by Zhang Feng's teaching philosophy. He was looking forward to what kind of breakthrough the new teaching model would bring. After all, many people had been taught by him. However, Yu Shinan still maintained a look of disbelief on his face. He shook his head. However, without waiting for him to speak, Zhang Feng directly spread his hands. If you don't believe me, why don't you come to my academy? It will only take a month. If you don't see any results, this kid will immediately close the academy. If this kid is lucky enough to satisfy Mr. Bosher, then would you like to stay? So you, kid, are not only lusting after me, but also want to take these old bones into Mount Shao? What do you think you have in Mount Shao? If it was just him, then Yu Shinan would have considered it as a favor to Li Shimin and would have also come. Moreover, he also didn't want to miss out on this opportunity. But now, he actually wanted to trap his 3 good friends in? How could that be possible? Yu Shinan stood up, his face gloomy. Kid, don't go overboard. Do you know who the 4 of us are? If it weren't for your poetry collection, the old man wouldn't have come to see you. As a junior, he agreed to go to the academy because of the novelty of your academy. You actually hit the snake with the stick and want them to come? Yu Shinan was so angry that he laughed. Then show me what you're really capable of. That's right, I remember that the previous Dragon Boat poetry meet was cancelled due to various reasons. If you want the 3 of them to come, then show me what you're really capable of. The Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet is a grand event that gathers all the literati in the world. When the time comes, I will also be participating. If you're really capable, then let those 3 old fogies come to you during the poetry meet. As they spoke, Yu Shinan had already walked to the door. However, at the door, Yu Shinan paused and looked at Zhang Feng. He said meaningfully, "The old man thinks highly of you." Zhang Feng was speechless. How the F***ck could this be? However, wasn't it just a poetry meet? Just nice, Lao Tzu would make a pot of stew for him. He was just worried about not having a teacher. He even sent this to me? Good, good, good. At that time, there will be so many poems from the Tang and Song dynasties. I don't believe that I will lose. All right. Thank you for your kind words. I will definitely be there on time. However, Zhang Feng's eyes turned and said, Mr. Bosher, why don't I give you 2 jars of wine? Yu Shinan, who had just walked out of the door, heard this and could not help but pause again. He seemed to hesitate. However, in the end, his rationality was defeated by Zhang Feng's wine. Yu Shinan sighed and said, Is the old man the kind of person who is greedy for wine? If you really want to give him, why not give him 10 jars? Okay. Chapter 634. Yu Shinan felt that he had been played by this kid again. However, he couldn't detect any abnormalities. In the end, he could only shake his robe and leave. As soon as he turned the corner and walked out of the crooked neck of Tonghui Lane, Fang Xianling couldn't help but ask, Brother Yu, what do you think of Zhang Feng? He can take on great responsibilities. However, this kid is too bad. We have to be careful. Yu Shinan's words basically judged Zhang Feng. However, at this moment, Yu Shinan said again, Actually, old man really hopes that those stubborn old men can come to the academy. This kid isn't simple at all. He was able to perfectly assemble so many things that seemed to be disorderly and even unrelated to each other. This is really beyond this old man's expectations. Moreover, this kid isn't bad. That's the most important thing. Fang Xianling finally relaxed. Brother Yu, you don't know. This kid is brainless and straightforward. He says whatever he wants to say. However, this kid knows a lot, so he can. Yu Shinan smiled bitterly and shook his head. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that the Academy's matters are too serious, old man really wants to be friends with him despite the difference in age. However, what scripture did that person say is true? At this moment, they were outside and there were many eyes and ears. Therefore, Yu Shinan could only ask about the mysterious scripture that he had heard from Li Shimin. Although he really wanted to ask in front of Zhang Feng, he still gave up in the end. This was originally a simple matter. He didn't want to turn it into a transaction. However, he really wanted to know about the mysterious scripture. In his conversation with Zhang Feng, he had a feeling that the so-called science, physics, psychology, and military were actually the mysterious scripture. This was what really attracted Yu Shinan. If those three old fellows were to find out about this matter, then with their tempers, not to mention not asking for money, even if they had to pay for it, they would still go to White Deer Academy. Yu Shinan was well aware of how attractive that thing was. Although there were very few people who knew about this thing, as long as they knew about it, which one of them wouldn't scramble like a flock of ducks? However, Yu Shinan did not do so. After all, he felt that this kid had set a trap for him today. He felt uncomfortable and disgusted. If news of this were to spread, he, Yu Shinan, would still have his face. However, Fang Xianling didn't think so when she heard this. At this time, Fang Xianling was deeply shocked. In Fang Xuanling's memory, there were no more than 5 people who could receive such an evaluation from Yu Shinan. Today, he actually witnessed it with his own eyes. Although in their eyes, Zhang Feng didn't need Yu Shinan's affirmation. He had already grown to the point where he could compete with the great Confucian. Chapter 635. Giddy up. Giddy up. Giddy up. Just as Zhang Feng plunged into the veteran's lair of the reclining square, 10 fast horses suddenly rushed into the Gate of Mind. When the 10 fast horses entered the city gates, they did not show any signs of slowing down. From afar, everyone could clearly see the bright yellow flags on the backs of the horses. They were messengers. Any citizen of the Tang dynasty could not recognize the county magistrate or the city gate guards, but they had to remember the messengers of the Yellow Gate. This was because these messengers were usually dispatched for economic and military affairs or important matters. Under these circumstances, any citizen, no matter what they did, had to make way for them. Even if you were the crown prince, the grand tutor, or even a first-class official, you had to obediently make way for them to reach the emperor. There was no choice. This was the iron law of the Tang dynasty. At this moment, when everyone saw that there were actually 10 small yellow flags at the city gate, they couldn't help but be shocked. They hurriedly made way for the city gate, and even the city guard opened the city gate in an instant. Giddy up. The shouting along the way resounded throughout the peaceful Chang'an city. The angry shouts continued all the way to the Vermilion Bird Gate without stopping. The leader of the Yellow Gate took out a strong crossbow that he carried with him. There was even a small bag hanging on the crossbow. He aimed at a wooden pillar on the city gate and shot it. Then, without stopping, he shouted, "Quickly open the city gate." Economic and military affairs. The city guard hurriedly took off the brocade bag. After seeing the contents, he hurriedly shouted, "Open the gate quickly." In the muffled sound, the 10 riders rushed into the imperial city without slowing down. Then, they rushed all the way to the Taiji Palace where Li Shimin was. Report. Economic and military affairs. Economic and military affairs. Before they reached the Taiji Palace, the leader of the Yellow Gate hurriedly took out a waste token. But here, they could not rush in like this. They would only face the strong crossbows of thousands of Jianghu guards. The leader was Yuqi Gong's son, Yuqi Baolin. He was a man built like an iron tower, and no one dared to say a word when he stood at the entrance of Taiji Palace. Yuqi Baolin took the medallion and examined it. Then, he searched them and hurriedly brought them to the imperial study. Without waiting for Yuqi Baolin to report, little Gizi, who had been waiting here for a long time, indicated for him to leave. He then led the group through a small yellow door into the imperial study of Taiji Palace. Li Shimin seemed to have long known about the matter of the little yellow sect charging into the imperial city. Such a thing had only happened once during his reign, and that was the time when the old thief Shieli had besieged the city. However, when the three of them said this, Li Shimin was even more determined to go to war. If we go to war with Tubo and Tuyuhan now, what do you think our chances of winning are? The three of them were shocked. Was the emperor determined to go to war? Qing Yaojin pondered and hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I remember that Fengzi once said that now is not the time to send troops to Tubo. Li Shimin interrupted Qing Yaojin a little irritably. I know this, but now is a heaven-sent opportunity. If we don't seize this opportunity, the Turks' garrison in Yuzhou has shown signs of a large number of mobilization. It seems to be related to Tubo. If we miss this opportunity and let the Turks invade Tubo, the Tang dynasty will be in danger. Your Majesty, we can't think of it this way. If we send troops now, we are bound to encounter the Turks. At this time, we will have to face three formidable enemies who are covetously eyeing us. Your Majesty, this is no small matter. If we make a move now, it will definitely affect the whole situation. No, the whole situation will be in chaos. They are already dissatisfied with the things we have just taken control of. If we send troops now, what will the people of the world think of us? We don't have a good reason to send troops. The three of them spoke one after another and directly rejected Li Shimin's words. At this time, Li Shimin was also a little hesitant. He waved his hand in annoyance and said, You can leave first. Let me think about it. The three of them looked at each other and then slowly left. As soon as they left the imperial study, the three of them could not help but look serious. There was an important factor that they did not mention just now, and that was the lack of food. The army was now short of food and could only eat 2 bowls of porridge every day. If they went to war now, how could they fight? When it came to war, the three of them had never been careless. However, even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. They were not Zhang Feng, who could conjure something out of thin air to add to the pot. They were all uncouth people. If they put those poisonous things in, it would be a big problem. The three of you, are you going to the imperial study? Just as the three of them were walking out of Taiji Palace with worried expressions, they happened to bump into Fang Xianling, who was just about to go see Li Shimin. The three of them sighed. They nodded in a muffled voice. Qing Yaojin said in a muffled voice, At this time, I advise you not to go see His Majesty. Fang Xianling heard this and smiled confidently. Is it because of that Tubo thing? When the three of them saw Fang Xuanling's expression, they couldn't help but look at each other. Then, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong picked up Fang Xianling and said, Elder Fang, let's go, let's find a place to have a good chat. We have encountered some troublesome matters. However, in the end, it still caused serious consequences, not to mention Tubo. The drought. Then came the locust plague. Although during this period, the Tang dynasty did make a lot of money, it also added fuel to the fire in Tubo. Although this was all a strategy. At this time, after the incident broke out, Fang Xianling still felt that it was inconceivable. What was this? This was national policy, but if war broke out at this time, then, before Fang Xianling could figure out what was going on, Qin Xiong, who had been silent all this time, slowly said, Not only that, according to the reports of spies, at least thousands of people starved to death in Tubo and Tuyuhan every day, and there were even cases of cannibalism. As for the survival of the people, the leaders of the two countries did not have a good solution, so unprecedented civil unrest broke out. According to the secret memorial, at present, the total number of people in the two countries is more than 100,000. Also, according to the news from General Li Jing in Yuzhou, spies in Yuzhou found that a large number of Turkic soldiers showed signs of mobilization, suspected to be directed at Tubo. Elder Fong, think about it, if the Turkic army went south to take Tubo, what would happen? Hiss. Fong Xianling could not help but be shocked. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He wanted to leave in a hurry, but before he could leave, Qing Yaojin pulled him back and said, "Don't worry, this war won't happen." Of course, they knew what Fong Xianling was going to do, but how could they let Fong Xianling go at this time? Qing Yaojin was fine, but Qin Xiong and Yu Qigong were not in Cheng and often. They finally caught Fong Xianling, who had just returned from the tavern. How could they let him go so easily? Moreover, they had been rejected 3 times when they went to the tavern. This morning, they learned that this guy actually took Yushernan to see Zhang Feng. What was he doing? How could they not want to know what Zhang Feng wanted to do? After all, the magical sabers, spears, and shields that the guy mentioned were treasures. However, at this time, it was Fong Xuanling's turn to be confused. Why do you say that this war cannot be fought? Qing Yaojin said with a wry smile, the army is short of food. How do you think this war can be fought? Do you want the soldiers to go to the battlefield with empty stomachs? Fong Xianling was stunned. However, after thinking about it, now that there was a shortage of food everywhere in the Tang dynasty, it was possible that the army was short of food. He could not help but nod and say, "You're right. How about old man go to see his majesty first, and then we'll talk later?" No, old Fong, you know that we are always away from home. It's not easy to find something good, so we want to talk to you. It's not urgent to see his majesty. Chapter 639. Yu Qigong was furious. He felt wronged. And Qin Shubao felt the same. But just when their nerves reached the limit, Qing Yaojin said slowly, Zhang Feng wants the boy from the Wei family to be an assassin, someone even better than Jianghu. What? What does he want to do? Damn, talent. Let's go. Old Black, go up the mountain and get him into the military camp. It's a waste if such a talent doesn't go to the military camp. While speaking, Yu Qigong got up and pulled Qing Yaojin away. Fong Xianling, who was watching the show, couldn't sit still. He hurriedly held the 2 men down, his eyes red with anxiety. What do you want to do? This academy is registered in the Ministry of Revenue. If you dare to do this, you'll have to face the wrath of the Emperor. And Old Black, you know what to do, don't you? Fong Xuanling's warning instantly extinguished the restlessness in the hearts of Yu Qigong and Qin Xiong. They anxiously pulled their hair. Talent. This was a talent. 100 years? They hadn't seen such a talent in 1,000 years. Not to mention the *T military science, just based on what Old Black said just now, they knew what it would mean if this matter was spread out. At this time, seeing the 2 anxious, Fong Xianling slowly stroked his beard and said, Old man knows what you want to say, but this academy is the Emperor's idea. You should know how important this academy is to the Emperor. And the reason why Cheng and city is what it is today is because of Fengzi's own money. He distributed 20,000 dawn of grain on this deserted mountain, so that the grain shortage in Cheng and city could be controlled. Yu Qigong was stunned. He knew about this. But he didn't expect that this boy did all this. Isn't this the Crown Prince's idea? How did this boy named Zhang Feng get the credit? Qin Xiong was a little confused. What was all this? He had just returned to Cheng and city out of curiosity about the academy. However, he had learned that the academy was established by the Crown Prince and managed by a genius from Cheng. Moreover, the rumors that were spreading like wildfire were all from White Deer College. It would be better if the Crown Prince was the one behind it, but why did it sound like the Crown Prince wasn't the one behind it? If that was the case, then this kid, who was he? Seeing Fong Xianling and Qing Yaojin like this, Qin Xiong couldn't help but be even more confused. Elder Feng, can you tell me what's going on? This kid called Zhang Feng, is he really so miraculous? Magical? Let Lao Tzu tell you. Are all the soldiers in your camp eating fine salt now? Qin Xiong didn't know what Xing Yao Jin wanted to say, but he still nodded subconsciously. Yes. That's right, what do you think of this thing? Xing Yao Jin knocked on the table. Old Hey, if you have anything to say, just say it. Why are you blabbering here? You're acting like a woman. What's wrong with this fine salt? Under such circumstances, they don't dare to go to war. Moreover, without military supplies, how can we start a war? Besides, if we force ourselves to go to war, it will inevitably lead to a strong counterattack from the Tuyuhun, the Turks, and even India. We've lost God's will. Li Shimin was angry. He threw the secret letters in front of him to the four of them. This is the intelligence sent by the spy just now. I'm sure you know the situation in Tubo and other places. Moreover, Tuli has transferred 100,000 elites from the Yuzhou garrison to the western region. I don't need to say anything about this, do I? If we don't start a war now, do you want to wait until the Turks invade Tubo before going to war? Li Shimin was angry. Wei Zheng and the others couldn't help but be shocked by his insistence on starting a war. Wei Zheng hurriedly said, Your Majesty, although we can go to war now, we just received a report that Tubo and Tuyuhun's envoys are about to enter Chang'an city. It seems that they are here to ask for help. Moreover, it's not appropriate for us to go to war now. Li Shimin frowned slightly. They came at this time? Li Shimin's eyes could not help but flash with killing intent. If they wanted to come, why would Tubo delay until now? Why did they only come now? What did this mean? It meant that they were afraid that the Tang dynasty would suddenly send troops at this time, so they wanted to find out the situation and ask for help from the Tang dynasty. This was really a good plan. At this time, Li Shimin's desire to start a war was slightly weakened. It would be better if Tubo didn't send people, but now that they came, he couldn't help but have some concerns. He knew that this was a stalling tactic, but Tubo was obviously on guard against the Tang dynasty. This was really despicable. On the one hand, they made trouble at the border, and now they were on guard against the Tang dynasty and came to ask for help. Damn it. Seeing that Li Shimin didn't speak, Wei Jing continued, Your Majesty, the most important thing now is to see what Tubo wants to do. As for the war, the Tang dynasty's situation really doesn't allow us to start a war. Once we start a war, the lack of supplies will be completely exposed. At that time, Li Shimin heard this. He couldn't help but clench his fists. But how could he not know this? Alas. Li Shimin sighed and said, Forget it, forget it. Let's see what they say tomorrow morning. You can all leave now. But once they sent troops, then the consequences, who would dare to think about it? Therefore, at this time, everyone fell into an endless struggle. Li Shimin was annoyed and snorted coldly. In an instant, everyone's discussion came to an abrupt end. Dear ministers, what do you think now? This time, Tubo must have come because of the 100,000 Turks. Do you think we should help them or not? This, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and the others were silent at this time because they already knew the result of this matter, but the emperor was now testing them. He wanted to test the foundation of these old guys. Sure enough, after a while of hesitation, the minister of the Ministry of Work said, Your Majesty, this matter needs to be discussed again. Our Tang dynasty is suffering from a food shortage at this time, so it's not good to mobilize the troops. Then let me ask you, once the Turks send troops, what should we do? That person was speechless. At this time, the officials who had prepared some words could not help but swallow back their words. That's right. If we don't help, then once the Turks take down Tubo, the door of the Tang dynasty will be completely open to the Turks. At that time, the Turks will come and go as they want, and we will not be able to do anything to them. What should we do? This is a serious problem. At this time, another official said, Your Majesty, even if the Turks really take down Tubo, it does not mean that they will attack our Tang dynasty. Moreover, now that the Turks are also suffering from a plague of locusts, they should be more in need of food than our Tang dynasty. Cattle, sheep, and horses are almost out of food. How can they have the energy to start a war? Li Shimin wanted to kill someone. However, he still suppressed the impatience in his heart and asked, Tell me your opinion. Hearing this, that person said, In fact, to put it bluntly, this is all because of the lack of food. Even if they can start a war against Tubo, in the end, both sides will suffer in the end. Moreover, Tubo does not have food at this time. In this way, even if they take down Tubo, without waiting for him to finish, Li Shimin speechlessly interrupted this stubborn old man. Okay, I know what you mean. Then, Li Shimin rubbed his forehead, looked at Wei Zheng and said, Prime Minister Wei, you said that Tubo's envoys are here? Wei Zheng cupped his hands and said, They are here, waiting for the summons outside the hall. Summon them. Yes. Hearing this, Xiao Gizi waved the whisk in his hand and shouted in a sharp voice, Summon Tubo's envoys, Na Ri Tu and Tuihan's envoys, Jianghu. Previously, because of the shortage of food, I am ashamed to say it out loud. The people in my territory are rebelling, and our army is short of food. It is really, not only that, now India and the Turks are eyeing us covetously. Originally, this humble subject was ready to leave a month ago. However, there is some unrest at the border now, so this humble subject can only return to Yunqing first and wait for your Majesty to pacify the border before coming out. However, this rebellion is too rampant, so it has been delayed until now. Since force did not work, was he trying to use soft tactics? Li Shimin glanced at Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin. Qing Yaojin did not make a sound. Instead, he used his foot to stomp hard on Qin Xiong's instep. Qin Xiong groaned in pain. Li Shimin pointed at Qin Xiong and said, Dear Qin Xiong, do you have something to report? What could Qin Xiong say? If he could not understand this matter, then he would not be able to survive. Qin Xiong cupped his fists and said, Your Majesty, this humble subject has received an urgent report from the garrison of Longyu and Jiannan. It is said that the places near Tubo and Tuihan have been plundered several times in this month. There have even been small-scale conflicts. Many people of the Tang dynasty have been killed and injured, and the number of people who have been plundered is no less than 5,000. Li Shimin heard this. He looked at Naritu with a dignified face and said, This is the small conflict you told me about? What are my people of the Tang dynasty in your eyes? There is no need to talk about sending troops to help. I will give you 5 days to leave the Tang dynasty. Otherwise, you will be arrested as Tubo spies. The Tang dynasty, before Naritu could say anything. Li Shimin waved his sleeve. Go. Do you think you can get me to send out my troops with just a few words? You must be thinking too much, right? When Naritu and Zack heard Li Shimin's words, their faces changed greatly. They hurriedly knelt on the ground and shouted, Your Majesty, this humble subject came here on behalf of our king. We are willing to sign a permanent vassal state with the Tang dynasty. Moreover, we will share all the military expenses and provisions for the Tang dynasty's help. What? He still has money and provisions? All the ministers were shocked. At this time, everyone felt more and more that this matter was unusual. Logically speaking, if such a thing really happened, they could resist it as long as they had provisions and supplies. Why did they need the Tang dynasty to help? If they had not heard Yu Qigong mention Tuli's movements before, they would only think that there was something wrong with this matter. But now? Li Shimin and Wei Zheng looked at each other. A touch of surprise flashed through their eyes. He said lightly, Are you sure about this?